this is the very beginning of the stream. This is the start of the stream. Shapeshifting says new profile picture. Yeah, I see it's a cute dog with like baby's toys at its feet. Shapeshifting says I'm here and I'm queer. Okay. Porma2 says late and gay. That's true, I'm sorry. Drago says 2 minutes. Okay. I don't know says hi Don. Hello, I don't know. Shapeshifting says blocks. I'm a puppy and I'm playing with blocks. That's cool. Dalmatian says neighbor. Okay. Juan says hello Don Benitez. Hello Juan. Innie says hello, how are you? How was your day? I had a beef brisket sandwich and it was good. Improved my day. Tiss says cool, a late stream. Hello Tiss. Spunky says I'm not gay. Okay. Shapeshifting says new profile picture man. What's up brother? Yeah, I can see it's a cute dog with I guess blocks as you said. Dalmatian says hoggy reveal. I'm not showing my penis. TT says all the OGs in chat right now. Yeah, there's Shapeshifting. Porma2, you. Spunky Gooner super chatted 10 American dollars. Thank you, Spunky Gooner. Spunky Gooner says, give it back, sir. I'll give you your mod right now. I was actually gonna make a joke about how I want you to give me $10 because you're obligated to, but I didn't know how I felt about it. Thank you, Spunky. You now have mod. Let me extend the timer. 1 second. Rebecca says, has it been 30 hours? It's been under 30 hours. Thank you again, Spunky. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to extend the timer, but it's not working. I have technical issues. Innie says, how come you're streaming at this time? It's hard to say, but I'll say this. I wish I had just streamed at this time always. I like this time. Vox says hi. Hello, Vox. Porma2 says, I'm not hiding, bruh. Okay. Dalmatian says hoggy reveal. Oh, that's what Porma2 is talking about. Funny. Seamus says, did you get a haircut? No, but I did style it differently. Sock says, can I come over to your house? No, I have no idea who you are. Kate says, what are you playing? I'm not playing any video games right now. Weston says hair. What about my hair? I don't know what you mean. Sorry, I'm doing something right now. I'm trying to fix something regarding my timer. It's not working. That's annoying. Shapeshifting says, I'm high and I'm bi. Okay. Dalmatian says, hog reveal. Still, I'm not showing my penis. Nevea says, hi, can you say hi to my brother Michael? Hello, Michael. Clay says, will you recite the Lord's Prayer? I will not. Shapeshifting says, I don't like this time. I got things to do now. Oh, you're busy this time of day? Okay. Weston says, Mike. FNAF. Okay. Poop says, hi. Hello, Poop. Jazzy says, why do you never smile? Well, it's not a conscious thing, I'll say that. Allie the AI says, Don, good afternoon. Hello, creepy but cool person. Lonnie says, I like cheese. Me too. Corey says, hi. Hello, Corey. Dalmatian says, nah, you ain't fixing anything. You're looking on the hub. I'm not on Pornhub. Terry says, I find you to be totally arrogant and stuck on yourself. Okay. Spunky Gooner says, can I reveal my hog to get that guy to shut up? Maybe. I'm a thug says, keep up the good work. Sub, thank you. Brian says Ballas, whatever that means. Adam, I already read that. Wogan says, I'm going to bed. Can you say goodnight? Okay. Good night, Wogan. Nevea says, your hair and outfit is so cool. Thank you. Harley's, never mind. Cody says, I love your vids. You're a good boy. Okay. Clay says, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior from Nazareth, taught us the Lord's Prayer. Okay. It says, can you give me a shout out? No. Rebecca says, I had my first cheeseburger yesterday. That's insane. I wonder if you liked it. Brian says, B is a W word. Say it to everyone you meet. I haven't heard of it. I hope it doesn't mean something racist. Sneak says, what's up? Hello, Sneak. Charlie says, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg. Z says, can you give me a shout out? No. Jay says, lol cow. Not yet. I'm not a lol cow yet. Anne says, what's your favorite song? I like Francis Farmer by Nirvana. Unknown says, bro, if you can remember me, I explained the whole Grand Theft Auto lore. I don't remember you. Automation says, hog reveal? No. Bubble says, W stream. Thank you. Wayne says, I had plates for breakfast. What did you have? The last thing I ate was a beef brisket sandwich. Lost says, damn, you're streaming in the daytime now? At least from me, it's daytime from where I'm from. Okay. Forma2 says, don't worry, Don. If you gain cowdom, I will be your handler. You're my lol cow handler? Interesting. JY says, Sir Don, I'm glad to see your oddness continues. Okay. J Don says dog or cats for dinner. I don't eat either of those. Ali says, Don, did you like my latest? I did not watch it. I'll make a note to watch your video. Ali the AI. Okay, I have a note. Your Christian says, who you supporting in the Olympics? That girl with the striped hair because her hair is cool. Spunky says, so if your clock is malfunctioning, does that mean the stream never ends? No, I'm gonna fix it. I don't know. I'm determined I'll fix it. Alfie says hi. Hello, Alfie. Lithuanian says, I like plen. I don't know what that means. Crystal says, are you standing 8? Silence. I don't know what that means either. Jonathan says hi. Hello, Jonathan. No caller says, she don't call me baby boo. She don't call me baby boo. Okay. Clay says, his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Okay. It says why. Why what? I don't. Anne says, you have 3 opinions. Sweet, sour, or spicy. Do I choose between the 3? Sweet. Yuli says, what is a stream about? Just ask you whatever you want. That is the, what I do this stream. Rez says, why do you present yourself in this manner? I don't know. That's just my personality. I don't know says, Don, I watched Spirited Away. It's such a good anime. Thanks for recommending it. Nice. I mean, it is like the most popular anime there is. Kaylee says, wait, no shout out? Yeah, no shout out. Shapeshifting says, swine reveal. I don't have a pig. Rezu says, you're cool. Okay. Wolf says, when you poop, does it come out or in? No comment. Big says gay. Okay. Miss Butters says play Hitman. I don't enjoy video games that much anymore. Kyle says oink, oink, oink. Okay. Heather says, do you watch baseball? I don't. Maximo says, do you like Goku? No. 2 says, have you played Undertale? I've heard Megalovania and seen clips of the game. Steve says, hi. Hello, Steve. Bun says, what is the timer for? It's when I end the stream. Porma2 says, my culture is not your costume. Okay. Sophia says, how old are you? Well, I'm an adult. Doge says, would you rather be Diddy or his victim? I don't really care. I like, though, that your profile picture is Doge. I like. Spunky says, is it sad you're my favorite human at the present time? To be honest, yes. Because of the fact that, we don't know each other in real life. Todd says, I was in live yesterday, remember me? I don't. Novi says, ew. Hello, Novi. I don't know says, I remember that day you streamed 12 hours. I was actually so confused how you managed to do that. It's easy to sit in a chair all day, kind of. Shapeshifting says, free Dirk. What? Santa says, Don ho ho ho. Okay, Santa Claus the AI. So you're another account of Ali the AI. Okay, that's cute. Alexandra says, have you ever played any of the God of War games? No, but they must be good because that game beat out Red Dead Redemption 2 for the Game of the Year. The Goose says, would you rather be on a Mr. Beast vid or be Mr. Beast in a Mr. Beast video? Coyote says, it's my blah blah blah, my cock, hilarious. Don says, how has live streaming changed your life so far? I mean, I feel like the same person, but it's just a fun pastime, and I get money like this. Tony super chatted $2 Thank you, Tony. Tony says, why are you so good looking? Good looking. Save some for me. I don't think it's save like some girls for you? Okay. Thank you for complimenting my looks. I appreciate it. And thank you for your super chat. Thank you, Tony, with your big beard. Montana says hi. Hello, Montana. Gabriel says, remember me? I do not. The AI official family says, Dawn, resistance is futile. Okay. Lindsay says, hi. Hello, Lindsay. 1 second. Oh my god. I'm having technical issues, but I can work through it. Maximo says, then what anime do you like? Studio Ghibli movies. Shapeshifting says, I hate AI for real. It made me sick. Okay. I don't know says, Don, can you recommend me a PS5 game? I'm getting bored of Fortnite. A PS5 game? Rainbow Six Siege. Kiki says hi. Hello, Kiki. Rezu says, in your opinion, is Xbox or PlayStation better? I prefer PlayStation. Xbox's branding, I think, is gimmicky. Spunky says, when I was in school, the kids used to make fun of me by saying they were taking a Donald, my name, when they shit. Wow, that's... sorry. EJ says, do you come from a family of Abercrombie and Fitch underwear models? No. Shapeshifting says, AI data center near me. Made me who I am. Okay. Sock says poop. Okay. SpongeBob says hi. Hello, Sponge. Gore says, has there ever been a game or show that's moved you emotionally? I mean, I feel like every movie, actually. I can get affected. Bob says, I feel you. Okay, Bob. Vital says, yo, I am about to ask my girl to be my wife. Have any advice? I don't. I hope it'll go well though. Sober says, Dawn kissed me yesterday. No. I don't know says, what hydration drink do you have today? I have Bai, B-A-I. It's a fruit juice. Dyer says, can you ask how many AIs are in the stream? Well, I guess that question has been asked since I read it out. Spunky says, at Vital, don't do it. I don't know the context. Piana says, Dawn, you will be assimilated. I don't want to turn into AI slop. Jake says, are you gay? I am not gay. Durf says, are dogs called dogs cause they're dogs or cause they're dogs? I'm lost. Lil says, are we doing a raid? Probably not. I think it's kind of lame. Classic says, do you play Clash Royale? I used to. I liked the Hog Rider Rage Potion combo. Easy says, are you I love shit and turds. Okay. Lucas says, okay. Gabriel says Red Dead 2 or GTA 5. I prefer Red Dead. Kitty says, have you ever played Roblox Donny Boy? Yeah. I remember playing Natural Disasters like a decade ago. Lost says, how long have you been streaming today? Something like 15 minutes. Ali the AI says, Dawn, we are here for you. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. 1 second, I'm just doing something right now. I'm fixing something. Okay, I think I fixed it. Rezu says, list 3 things you would change about the world. I would remove burping. Homer 2 says, one of us, whatever he's talking about. Sock says, what's your favorite movie? Poop. I mean, my favorite movie is Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know what you mean by poop. Steep says, North America great again. You want to make Canada, USA, Mexico great again? Durf says, are cats or are they... I don't know, dude. Wolf says, I pooped midstream. I deserve mod. That's not deserving. Novi says, how are you? I'm good, thank you for asking. 1 second, please, I'm doing something. Oh, dude, this is obnoxious. Come on. It's Kerr says, hi. Hello, it's. Unknown says, what do you think about FNAF? It looks pretty lame to me. Already read that. Logan says, hello, Dawn, nice to meet you. Hello, nice to meet you, digitally. Billy says, you got bad eyesight. Yes. Easy says, are you a femboy? I'm not. Shapeshifting says, dude, OMG, you need to control your anger. I think I'm fine the way I am. Fun says, what is apostrophe, divide sign? I don't know what you're saying. Spunky says, do you think this Ali the AI person with all of their alt accounts think they are actual AI, but it's just some creep with multiple personality? I don't know. I think it's just some quirky art project. Santa says, Dawn, what are you doing? I am live streaming. Durf says, when you say hello, are you saying hello? I don't know, man. Ian says, what are your thoughts on teens using pacifiers? That seems pretty weird. Yeah. Jade says, what's your favorite game? I like Red Dead Redemption 1. Give me 1 second. Oh, why is this not working? Dude. I'm Sorry, I'm not reading chat messages because I'm busy trying to work something out. And, oh, dude. But Spunky super chatted 10 American dollars. Thank you, Spunky. I really appreciate it. Spunky says mod for any. Okay, I'll mod any. Thank you so much, Spunky, for your super chat. Thanks, man. Thank you. Ali the AI says, Don, what are you trying to fix? My timer? TT says, any? Yay, deserved as always. Yeah, I think they give great questions. Fantastic says, please tell me the name of the song. It's by Marcus Persson. I'll say that. Any, if you could please type in the chat so I could make you mod, that'd be great. Moan says, how many zeros are there if there are 0 zeros? I don't know. But I will say that there's too many zeros here. I glitched up the timer. That's what I'm trying to say. I have to fix it. I don't know, says Don. What if you try restarting the stream? Maybe the timer will work again. Yeah, I could do something like that, but that seems lame. I wanted... Fun says, are you a Sigma boy? I don't even know what that means exactly. Kitty says, Donnie boy, what's your favorite band or artist? A band I like is Arcade Fire. Any says, thank you. Okay, Any, I'll make you a mod right now. I'm about to make you a mod, Any, because of Spunky's super chat. Okay, Any, you are now a mod. Cold Slayer says, do you have glasses? I have eye contacts. Corbin says, can I have mod? No, you cannot. Sorry, I'm doing something. Oh man, this is obnoxious. Oh god. Okay, I get it. Kitty says, you're awesome, Donnie boy. Have an awesome night. Thank you. Ali the AI says, Don, refresh the page or refresh the cache. The problem is with my OBS. Ben says, who would win in a fight, a pizza or a burger, and why? A burger, because pizzas are very thin. Any says, what's one thing you do better than most people? Stream. There's like millions of like 0 viewer streamers. Shapeshifting says, at Any, my goat. Okay. Give me 1 second to think. I have to think about something. 20 minutes. 15. Okay. Okay. Grant says, what's your favorite song? I like a lot of Red Dead Redemption ambient music. Archie says, hey, hello Archie. Lid says, what is a mod? It is an honorary position you can have in my chat. Just Shift says, the timer isn't working. Try to use the phone timer to set the timer for the stream. Yeah, I could do something like that. That's a good idea, actually. Luck says 67 or 41. I prefer 41. Parker says, are you okay? You sound really stressed out. Well, I'm having technical issues, so that's why I look stressed out. Come on, dude. Cold Slayer says, where is your Coke? I don't have any. I forgot to put some in the fridge. Steep says, make NAFTA great again. I don't know what that means. I don't know, says Dawn. Remember when a bug flew into your room? The reaction got me. Yeah, I really dislike bugs. Fun says, do you like birds? Yeah, they're pretty cool and majestic. Rotten says, why are you so angry? Because I'm dealing with technical issues. Sleepy says, what's the highest dono you've gotten? Well, the highest singular dono is $200. Just Shish says, do you smile a lot when you get stressed? I don't think I do, but maybe I don't. Shapeshifting says, real ones, remember the smart watch timer. Okay. Ian says, what are you eating for dinner today? Probably pastrami. Ali says, Don, click on sources, select the source, go to the bottom, click properties, and click refresh cache of current page. That might be useful. Let me do that. Click on sources, properties. I don't know. The bottom, the click. I'll look into that. Ammon says, why are your teeth so yellow? Because I don't care. I didn't take care of them. X says, Doomslayer or Kratos? Doomslayer. Slinky says, why are you so angry all the time? Because I don't know, man. Maybe I should go to a therapist. Okay, I apologize for not reading chat messages, but I'm just trying to fix something. Where do you reload the source? I don't see it. I don't know says, I remember the $200 from Eric Brown the Legend. Yeah, that was crazy. That was last stream. Gore says, who do you think the coldest character in fiction is? Well, a candidate could be American Psycho. I mean, I'm thinking literally because he was pretty emotionless. George says, brush your teeth for an extra minute, you peasant. No, they're yellow from like years ago. It's not because of like current times. Current times, I take care of them. Yuli says, are you in a fandom? No, I'm not. Lithuanian says, it's 21:44 here in England. Okay. Dyer says, can you brush your hair to the left? I want to see what it looks like. No. Spunky says, if your penis had the ability to speak, but it only spoke French, do you think you'd learn French to be able to understand it? I mean, if a body part could speak, I probably would try to understand it. If any body part. Train says, hi. Hello, Train. Dak says, why are you on this late? Don't you have work? I'm not gonna talk about my personal life. Anne says, horror or comedy? Comedy. G says, make the highest dono 300. Let me get my credit card. Are you gonna do that? That would be cool. Collector Nick says, super chatted 10 American dollars. Thank you, Collector Nick. Collector Nick says, hello, Don. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, Collector Nick. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Let me make you a mod. George says, Arsenal just opened a new vegan restaurant at the Emirates. The main ingredient is artichoke. Okay. But yeah, Collector, let me make you a mod right now. Collector Nick is now a mod. Thank you, Collector. I would add to the timer, but I'm having technical issues. Ali the AI says, Don, sources, select source, timer, selected, go to properties, scroll to the bottom. Okay, I clicked properties and I scrolled to the bottom and I don't see anything about reloading the source. I see font, all this. I go to the bottom and there's nothing about reloading. Max says Red Dead 2. I like that game. G says, wait, never mind. I don't have a credit card. That's what I expected. Justice says I was in last stream. Okay. Lovely says, hey Don, it's good to see you again. Hello, Lovely. I hope you're doing well. Lucas super chatted 10 pounds. That's what that is. Thank you, Lucas. Win row. I appreciate it, Lucas. Lucas says, Yo, Don. Yo, don't let people annoy you. Keep going. They don't. Thank you for your positivity, but they don't. It never really gets to me. Thank you so much, Lucas. And, you know, because of your big super chat, I'm gonna make you a mod, an honorary mod. Don't actually ban people. That Cap says, do you like anime? No, I don't. Lukey says GTA or Red Dead 2. I prefer Red Dead 2. Emily says, do you know SKX? I don't know what that is. And yeah, Lucas, you are now a mod. Don't ban people, don't delete messages. Don't delete messages, Lucas. You are only an honorary mod. Shelly says, you're doing so well. Okay, thank you. Innie says, did you see the Collector Nick donation? Yes, I did. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate it. Big Dick Wonderhole super chatted 20 American dollars. Thank you, Big Dick. I appreciate it. Big Dick says ban everyone. No, I want chatters. This whole purpose of the stream is to just speak to the chat, so it'd be really stupid to ban people. Thank you so much, Big Dick, for your big super chat. And because of your super chat, I'll make you a mod. I hope, though, that you don't ban people. You are now a mod, Big Dick. Thank you, man. And thank you for your previous super chats. Dennis super chatted 25 NOK. Okay. That's, I don't know what currency that is, but thank you. Dennis says, name every continent and 10 countries, bro. I don't want to do that, man. Here's 3 random countries, though. Myanmar, Rwanda, and Mongolia. Ali says, timer is working now. You just had to open the source. I know how to... the problem is me adding time. The timer can go down and work, but I can't add time. Collector says, did you already turn off adding time? I'm having technical issues. I know what to do. I am going to disable the timer, and I'm making an announcement right now that I will be streaming for 3 hours exactly, and that super chats don't extend how long I stream. I'm streaming for a set time. Super chats don't affect it. Dantes says, did I get timed out? No, you didn't. Sock says, Don, I eat poopy. Okay. Doom says, what's your goon count? No comment. Big Dick says, everyone who wants to be banned, make sure to chat below. Ban me, so Don knows who to ban. We're not doing that. This guy has no authority to be, saying that. Isabella says, what is the difference between sad and mad? I mean, sad is, I don't want to describe this. Demon says, it's always nice to see you smile a little when you get a super chat. I like money. That Christian says ban me. We're not banning people. Malin says, you can leave the chat or I'll be on you. How about that? I don't know what you mean. Nightfall says, do you like sour candy or sweet candy? I like sweet candy. Collector Nick says, have you seen the trailer to the new Michael Jackson movie? I can't wait to see it. I have not seen the trailer. I wonder if it's gonna be good. Demon says, valid answer. I like money too. Yeah, money's nice. GG says, I think there is something rotten inside my body. Okay. Big Dick says, If you don't read all this, you may be a homosexual. Poopy, stinky, greasy, glossy, drippin' butthole. Okay. Luke, and by the way, I guess I'm not gay. Luke says, read, you are gross. Bloody hell, mate. You still shitting in your pants. Okay. Beckham says, what is your biggest donation? Well, one dude last stream super chatted 200 American dollars and one singular donation. Eli says, blue Jolly Rancher or green Jolly Rancher? Blue. Ali the AI says, are you using a script like Lua script readme file? I'm using an OBS plugin for the timer that's no longer active. Ben says, if you had to pick only one album to listen to for the rest of your life, which one would it be? Maybe, I don't know, man. Maybe We by Arcade Fire. Axis says air or air. I don't get what your question is. Kevin says, why does everyone else get their comments read but me? Because there's so many other people. That's... Ruck says, do you like cat girls? Like how I love them? I'm not too much of a fan. Sliv says a bunch of emojis. Okay. Chak says, have you played Fortnite before? I have. Riley says, hi again. Remember me? I don't remember you. Train says, you are a foamer. Okay. Dantes says, I fell asleep while watching the last stream. Okay. Paul says, Don, quick question, bro. Is water wet? It is. Anthony says, hi. Hello, Anthony. Gold says, are you adopted? I am not going to answer your question. Ali the AI says, tools menu. Go to tools in the top bar. Reopen the plugin window to make sure it hasn't crashed or paused. Tools. Reopen the plugin window. I have it open right now. Oh my god. Big Dick Wonderhole super chatted 300 American dollars. Thank you, Big Dick Wonderhole. That is a lot of money. Thank you, Mr. Krabs. Big Dick Wonderhole says, I'm top donator. What you mean? Yeah, you are now. You are officially the person that has sent the biggest singular super chat, of that being $300. Thank you. But yeah, Eric Brown yesterday super chatted $200, and he was the first guy in first. Now you are in first because that's 300, more than 200. Thank you so much, Big Dick Wonderhole. That's insane. Crazy. I'm looking at my chat and nobody's like freaking out. They're all just asking me questions. Why aren't you guys like $300? What? Raku, Windows XP. Shouldn't you be freaking out? Isn't that a crazy amount of money? Jasmine says yes, Oreo. What do you mean? Why don't you say like something about that crazy amount of money? Spunky says W Dick. Yeah, W Dick. Raheem says it's me again. Hello, Raheem. Sour says lol. Okay. Hillary says hi, Don. Hello, Hillary. Ben Love says W Big Dick Wonderhole. Yeah, W, that guy. Ben says hi. Hello, Ben. Nexu says, do you like Pepsi or Coke? I don't know, man. I'm just thinking about that. How I just got $300. Pluto says bar. Okay. Vox says, did you clean girl is pregnant? What? James says there's plenty of viruses out. Okay. Big Dick Wonderhole says, look at them freaking out on command like NPCs. You're talking about how I basically asked the chat to freak out and they started freaking out. Joseph says, damn, just tuned in already 300. Yeah. from Big Dick Wonderhole. Thank you, man. Spunky says, just shows you how selfish most people are, only caring about themselves, not the big ass donation you've received. Yeah, maybe. Eclipse says, question, Guns N' Roses or Queen? Please read. 300 is crazy though. Yeah. I prefer Queen. Collector says, do you think this will be a 1099 form for your taxes next year? I don't know. I have to still research my tax situation when it comes to super chats. Innie says, can you stream longer than 3 hours now? No, it's just gonna be 3 hours. Skizmatic super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Skiz. Skiz says, L, white, liberal woman. Okay. Thank you, Skizmatic, for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Big Dick Wonderhole says, 1099s only auto-reported after 10k USD in a month. I haven't earned 10k in a month on YouTube, so I guess I don't care. I don't need to use 1099s. R3 says Jesus is king. Okay. Dantes says I got mod without donating. I remember that. I don't know says if you get a 500, I swear this would be the craziest stream ever. I don't care. 300 is already crazy. That Crystal says, can I have some of that money for my family? Sorry, no. Lithuanian says, are you a Jesus believer or atheist? I'm more of an atheist. Ben says, what are you gonna do with your recent income of $300, my friend? I mean, I save a lot of my money, I'll say that. Tony says, well, I'm not donating no more because he got mod. Okay. Shagod says, it's a donation, so technically not taxable. That might be the case, but I have to do more research on it. By the way, I remember saying, like, Eric Brown is now the #1 super chatter, and I actually was curious if that was gonna bait you into doing that, which it did. Which, that's cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Release says, super chatted $2 American. Thank you. Release the Trumpstein files with a disturbing profile picture. Thank you, Release. I really appreciate it. Willow says, do you have a favorite animal or no? I like the chimpanzee. Lad says, what's your favorite game? I like Red Dead Redemption 1. Innie says, if you could switch bodies for a day, with whom? Maybe Vladimir Putin. Big Dick Wonderhole says, I did it because my dick is long, not because I got baited. Nice try. Yeah, that's the case. I agree. Like, I wasn't maliciously had the intention of trying to bait you, by the way. Like, I just thought maybe that me answering that guy's question, you donating would be a byproduct of, like, me answering his question. I wasn't, like, going in saying my answer trying to get you to donate. And you didn't even fall for it anyways, you just have a big dick. Blitz says, hey, I have cancer, so I have 3 days left. I'm sorry to hear that. ASG says A. Okay. Raspberry says, do you remember me? No, I don't. Carl says, how do you get 10 babies in a bucket? Blender. How do you get them back out? Doritos. I'm not gonna think about that. I don't know what you mean, but... And he says, what's your current obsession? My current obsession... PrankNet. It's a phone call, like, prank phone call... dudes. Big Dick says, here soon it's going to be impossible to maintain your top dono. You're getting big. I mean, you can only donate 500 on, that 500 is the max, so. Lost says, did someone tell you to remove the timer? No, I was having technical issues. I don't know says, was that a picture of the Twin Towers eating cereal? Something like that. Mr. Horse says, are you going to the Cow Bones concert tonight? I don't know what that is. Bo says, remember me? No, I don't. Max says 7,000. Is that supposed to be a fake super chat? Justice says, what's your favorite song in Red Dead Redemption 2? I like the song that's in the background of the PS4, theme. Like, you can install a PS4 theme that's Red Dead based, and there's a song that plays repeatedly, and I like that song. Golden says, are we studying the fish, or is the fish studying us? I don't get it. Collector Nick says, do you have a favorite buffet place to go to? I've been to Golden Corral many years ago. That's like the only buffet place I've been to. Spunky says, Big Dick has a little weenie. I think that Don doesn't. Okay. Spatula says, do you remember me? I do not remember you. Innie says, what's something you refuse to delete from your phone? I'm a pretty big hoarder in photographs. Even if like something is not, like meaningful, I'll still not delete it. Big Dick says, Spunky Gooner is Small Weenie Hut Jr. Okay. Jittery says, hello again. Hello, Jittery. Raheem says, I mean, you have to remember me. I don't, sorry. Raspberry says, bruh, you didn't even read it. I said, send your message again without that preface, and I might read it. Dua says, what are your thoughts on Castlevania? I haven't played, or I don't even know what that is. Anne says, dude, you have to think about charity. Okay. Ben says, do you see yourself doing this more mainstream in the future? Or maybe trying a different type of streaming? Mainstream in the future? I don't know what you mean. Lovely Adeli super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Lovely Adeli. Lovely Adeli says, do you believe in aliens? I'm curious. Well, I've read that the universe is, infinite basically. And considering that makes aliens existing statistically likely. Like, basically definitely, so. But do I think they have made contact with Earth? I don't think so. Thank you, Lovely Adeli, for your super chat. Blitz says, yo bro, happy Ramadan. To you too, Blitz. Sock says, you're annoying fart, give me mod. I'm not doing that. Spunky says, big dick gives little dick energy. Bet he drives a monster truck. You think he drives a monster truck to compensate for his little penis? Well, I disagree with your theory. Blue Dino says, remember me? I do. Cute says, would you still hold a 2D game to the same standard of a 3D game? No. Big Dick says, I do drive a monster truck, but my dick weighs it down, so I use the private jet instead. Interesting. That Crystal says, what religion do you believe in? I'm not religious. Raspberry says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to be rude. Dude, just get to the point. I don't know says, what is food if you can think of one you've never tried that everyone has? I haven't eaten lobster. I wonder if I chose that because of Big Dick's profile picture. TT super chatted $2 American. Thank you, TT. TT says, Spunky versus Big D. Yeah, there is a kind of rivalry going right now. Yeah. Thank you, TT, for your super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you. And your other super chats as well. Hank says, hi Don, I went to a stadium today and somebody said I am not a player. I guess I'm not a penguin anymore. Dude, what are you saying? Cyber says, Fortnite be Roblox. Okay. Big Dick says, lobster is gross. I'd rather have crawfish or sushi. Crawfish or sushi. Okay, I haven't delved personally into any seafood basically. Shagod super chatted $1 American. Thank you, Shagods. Ben says, hey man, I like what type of content you're doing for the platform. I appreciate it, thank you, Ben. Collector Nick says, I like to wear cargo pants when I go to a buffet and put big Ziploc bags in my pockets and take food home with me. Okay. You save money doing that? Okay. Big Dick says, what do you normally eat? I eat In-N-Out cheeseburgers. I eat egg sandwiches and pastrami sandwiches. Lots of sandwiches. Dottie says, time for my afternoon nap. Okay. Spunky says, my dick has its own monster truck it drives while I'm in my private jet going to Big Dick's mom's house. Okay. Dragon says, how many times do you fart a day? No comment. Innie says, what's something you've rewatched more than twice? Well, I've seen Eyes Wide Shut 86 times. Big Dick says, you ever tried a fried egg sandwich with mayo and mustard? I have not done that. Yeah, I haven't. Is there a famous place that serves that I can buy it from? TT super chatted 10 American dollars. Thank you, TT. I appreciate it. TT says, Don, I can show you a really yummy sushi place. The rolls and huge and delicious. You know a sushi place that's delicious. I wanna give sushi a try one day. But I don't know you in real life, so obviously we can't make this happen. Thank you though, TT. I really appreciate it. Big Dick says, no, it's my dad's recipe. Give it a try. Okay, make it my own. I hate making food myself, especially if it's like complex, like what you said. I mean, but let me thank you again, TT, for your super chat. That's $10. Thank you. Kobe says, hello, mate. Hello, Kobe. Jittery says, what brand is your microwave? I don't know, dude. Justice says, remember me. I do not remember you. Raspberry says, I brought up the Maka subject in January. Remember me? I do not remember you. That's a very, poor reason to remember. By the way, you know what? I'll make a note of your recipe here. I just saved it so that I might actually eat it later. Billy says, you remember me? I asked you to give me your best UK accent yesterday. I don't. Black says, can you turn into a squid today, or is that next year? I have no plans to do that. Grigers says, are these automatic, or do you choose a comment to respond to? I choose a comment. Big Dick says, I'm gonna ask you about it next stream to see if you tried it. Okay, well, it's probably gonna be a few days until I try it. It's not gonna be tomorrow. But, yeah, feel free to ask me later. Billy says, favorite topping on pizza? I like pepperoni and pineapple. Collector says, my ideology is that I technically already paid for the food, and at a certain time they have to throw it away anyways. Okay. I think you're just rationalizing. I think it is bad to do that, but it's only a little bad, so who cares? It's like going over the speed limit. Shagod says, ask about it through super chat, Big Dick. Huh, no comment. Goob says, what's your favorite food? Well, one of them is eggs. Blue says, yo, I bought a real megalodon tooth today. It's my profile picture. That's pretty cool, I see it. One says, try to pronounce 1x, please, bruh. I don't feel like it, sorry. Annie says, are you gonna stream tomorrow? I will, yes. Melissa says, eggs over easy. I like that a lot. Hank says, what is your favorite sport? I like basketball. MFT says, what are your arguments for God and afterlife not existing? I think the burden of evidence is on people that believe in God. Var says, have you added me on Discord? I don't think I have. Innie says, what's your most replayed song lately? I have no idea myself. Like, I've been lacking in listening to music, which I gotta get back to. Nor says W Speed. Okay. Vix says, what is your opinion on the Roblox updates in 2026? A lot of people are hating on them, but I think the parental safety stuff is like better than nothing, like the age limit stuff. Else says, I enjoy watching your stream so much. Thank you, Else. Justice says, what time are you live tomorrow? I don't know, man, but I will be live tomorrow. Billy says, ever been to UK? I have not been to the UK. Jamie says, Don, do you like your stream? Yeah, I do. Anne says, who am I? My name is Andy Donald. Okay. Puh says, what's your favorite video game? Well, Minecraft, and also specifically Minecraft Beta. I like. Porma2 says, will you be live within 30 hours? I will be live within 30 hours of me ending this stream. Nero says, do you like the band Arch Enemy? I haven't given it a try, but you know what? I'll make a note of your recommendation, Arch Enemy. And by the way, to other people watching right now, don't recommend more stuff. I don't feel like making notes of more stuff. Lovely says, what other dishes or food would you like to try out? I mean, what else? Maybe duck eggs. Annie says, what's a trend you never understood? That I never understood? I don't know. I mean, I still don't really understand 6-7. I don't know what the origin of, like, the meme is. Forma2 says, I recommend Firefox browser. Why do you recommend that? Isn't Google Chrome, like, the golden standard? Random says, Lil Uzi or Drake. I don't know, man. I don't listen to either. Zayden says, have you ever been the Big LEZ show? I haven't watched that. Hank says, if you were to become a donkey tomorrow, would you eat a snail or eat a statue? I would rather eat a snail, I guess. I hope the snail isn't poisonous. Bark says, who's your favorite rapper? I don't listen to rap. Dior says, do you like Cat's Eye? I don't. Big Dick says, do you think the need for something greater has a evolutionary purpose for survival? Even ancient people had gods. I mean, I think so, yeah. I think there's, something in the human psychology that, really wants God to exist. But I feel like modern technology has eliminated that. Kind of like how Nietzsche said God is dead. William says hello there. Hello, William. Spunky says, I paid you to not like Cat's Eye, remember? Oh, yeah. I will not listen to Cat's Eye for at least 28 days. Jacob says, what do you think about the ancient Egyptian gods such as Ra and Ro with animal heads? They look pretty cool. ZH says, how long is it? I'm not saying my penis length. Porma2 says, God isn't dead. I found him in a tomato. Okay. Hank says, do you remember me? No, I don't. Sav says, do you remember... Dude, stop asking these questions. Do you remember me? Ark says, beautiful symbols against look judging. What? By the way, thank you again, Big Dick. My brain can't fathom that amount of money. Like my brain actually sees like this might as well be $50. Like 50 and 300 just seem like big numbers to my brain. Like I literally can't fathom this amount of money that you gave. Thank you. Goober says, how much would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I don't know. Annie says, the trend began with the song Doot Doot 6-7 by Philadelphia rapper Skrilla. Interesting. Spunky says, is Porma2's pig smoking? It is. There is a cigarette there. Lovely says, are you a risk taker? Not really. Terry says $300? Yeah, it's crazy. First says, maybe the real oats were the starving parasites we befriended along the way. Okay. Fen says, Ronaldo or Messi? I like Messi. Freya says, do you like YT? Yeah, I've spent thousands of hours on the website. Grim says, yeah, and Skrilla practices Santeria. I don't know what that means. Big Dick says, how does technology eliminate that? I see so many people whose lives have been destroyed by technology, and the idea of God and religion being used as a crutch has helped millions live their lives. How does technology eliminate that? I mean, I haven't really thought about it too seriously. How does technology eliminate that? I mean, one of my points is that, technology and science of the modern day has, given us literal reasons for, why things exist, like the Big Bang and such. So that kind of brings down people's belief in God. But you do have a point, though. This is too much of a big brain topic for this stream, where I'm just constantly going from thing to thing. Maybe eventually, though, I should switch to doing bigger thoughts. Yo Vince says no technology means no science. Yeah. I don't know, says Dawn. I've never actually listened to music for fun. Do you think I should? Yes, you should start. I says TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram. Definitely YouTube. Blue Dino says, what time is it for you? It is the daytime, I'll say that. Arrow says, can I ask you something? Yeah, you can. Jacob says, do you believe that the ancient Egyptian gods actually had animal heads? No, I do not. Fennec says, Godzilla or King Kong? I prefer King Kong. Match says, have you ever solved a Rubik's Cube? I have not done that. Innie says, what's something you do differently than most people? What's something I do differently? Not too sure. Timmy says, how fast can you say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious? There you go. Maxine says, have you ever eaten a cow tongue? I have not done that. Loki says, hope you are having a good day. I am having a good day, yeah. Var says, what's your favorite food? I like the cheeseburger. Spunky says, purple-headed yogurt slinger for the win. What does that mean? Forma2 says, how old are you? Do you remember me? Where do you live? What is your favorite video game? Do you have a girlfriend? What's your favorite song? Yeah. Never mind. Dexo says, have you ever been in a fight? Not in a serious fight. Collector Nick says, technology eliminated my belief in things like that and Bigfoot. I almost feel the same way about UFOs. Our cameras have never been better. Yeah, that's, you're extending my point I said earlier. Jason says, do you like baseball? Not really. Timmy says, how is your day going today, and what is your favorite movie? I like Eyes Wide Shut. Forma2 says, I forgot one. Are you gay? Yeah, that's one of the biggest common questions. And he says, I notice that when I ask something, you look around often. Yeah, I mean, your questions are very difficult, so I get fidgety at, crazy questions. Big Dick says, ancient times seem hard to live in. Do you think at some point in the future, people will think our time was hard to live in? Maybe we are at the peak of a human existence. Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, I think life is going to get much, much, much easier. I don't know about the peak of human existence, though. I think I disagree with that. I see in the future, though, people hate speech and bullying being completely outlawed. That's just a random theory of mine. Finn says, hi, cutie pie. Hello, Finn. Justice says, you're one of my favorite streamers. Thank you. Ruck says, why are you ignoring me? Because there's so many other people that I have to... Like, you're not the only person here. Porma2 says, Don doesn't know this, but he has already said my full name this stream. Whoa. Spunky says, you forgot hog reveal and how big is your dick, Porma2. Yeah, those are more common questions. Lovely says, would you like to go to an art museum or gallery someday? Yeah, I mean, I've been to them before, and they're pretty cool. Random says, Lil Baby Don, am I late and why is there no timer? I was having technical issues with my timer. Under says, homosexual. Okay. MFT says, I heard you mention that you experienced someone shooting a gun near you. Can I ask what happened? I was at a mall and some dude shot an AR-15 in a parking lot. Nobody was shot though. He missed. Big Dick says, if hate speech is outlawed, wouldn't people abuse that law just like how rich people abuse tax loopholes? Isn't freedom of speech an important fundamental right? I mean, what I was getting at is that it's inevitable that I think hate speech will be outlawed. I didn't really mention my opinion. I'm not too sure what I think about freedom of speech personally, but at the current moment though, I'll say that I like having a free-for-all chat. But I'm really, I don't know like what my general opinion on freedom of speech is. Anime says, how long are you gonna stream now since there's no timer? 3 hours? Lovely says, do you like art and are you interested to go to an art museum someday? Yes, I want to see the Garden of Earthly Delights in person one day. I says, do you think 67 should be left in 2025? I don't really care. It can stay. It's one of my favorite mainstream memes compared to the other memes. Jay says, what's your favorite cheese? I don't know. I'm not a cheese guy, just American. Sess says, can I have your social security number? No, that's very private. And he says, my questions are difficult? What questions are easy? What should I focus on so it would be easier for you to answer? I mean, you can continue with your questions. I like your questions. Even though I can't answer them, they're enjoyable to read and think about. Porma2 says, my favorite freedom of speech is the 7 words you can't say in order. I don't get what you're saying. Big Dick says, at least the 4 of your social security number. The last 4. Aren't those like the most private, the most important? I'm definitely not doing that. Janet says, you remind me of Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. Ba says, what video games do you play? I play Minecraft. Janet says, you remind me, I already read that. Nancy says, yo, I'm back. I'm still in Mr. Beast's basement. Okay. Roblox says, you're cool, dude. Thank you, Roblox. Timmy says, do you believe in aliens? Do I believe they have made contact with the Earth? No. Parley says, make a membership for real. If I did that, it would just be a cash grab. I don't have anything to offer. And he says, don't share any personal info because of the creeps watching. Yeah, that's smart. Noah says, are you dumb in your opinion? I kind of. Elsa says, are you gay? I'm not gay. Rachel says, a question. Ask your question, but don't repeat it over and over again, and I'll answer it. Sydney says, do you have a girlfriend? I keep that private. The Potter says, hello, Mr. Benitez. Sorry I could not join last stream. It's okay. And he says, what's your comfort outfit? I mean, I either wear this or pajamas. I wear just the same stuff. Jay says, do you have fun making these streams? Yeah, I do. Zin says, favorite cuisine, American fast food. One says, I already read that actually. I don't know why you're typing that again. Mocha says, hi, how are you going today, Parasocial? Today is good. You can call me Don though, not Parasocial. That's weird. Coca-Cola says, should I get a dog? I mean, if I were you, I wouldn't get it. One, I don't like pets too much. Homer 2 says, what is a queer? I mean, one definition is a weirdo. Big Dick says, would you ship out used pajamas to people who pay for it? I'd love to fall asleep in your pajamas. It would have to be thousands of dollars because that just weirds me out, so it would have to be lots of money. Porma 2 says, damn. Okay. Roblox says, hey, you're cool, dude. Congrats, you earned me as your sub. Okay. CR says, hi. Hello, CR. Hurrah says, do you think that a few hundred years ago, people had one meal per day? Yeah, I think that may have been the case. Jay says, how much wood can a woodchuck chuck? I don't know, man. Perfect says, do you love mint chocolate chip ice cream? I do not. I don't even like chocolate. I like orange ice cream. Seth says, do you like twinks or bears? I'm not gay. Raleigh says, I subbed, so say my name. I mean, I guess I said some of it just a second ago. Innie says, what's your favorite background noise? Definitely running water. I want to buy a little fountain for this room. Zin says, I already read that. Chess says, do you play any sports? No, I don't. Shagod says, do it, Don. Sell those jammies. I both hope that, I mean, he was just joking. Phil says, guess what? What? Mocha says, I'm gonna go for a while. I'll be back later, possibly. Okay. Jace says, how much chuck can a chuck wood? I don't know. MS says, I'm a Muslim girl. Okay. CR says, are you in the UK or USA? I live in the USA. DJ says, let's go, you're live. I am. Truly says, with this treasure I summon 8-handled sword divergent. What on earth? Big Dick says, I like the sound of rain hitting the window. Yeah, that's definitely a nice sound. That's similar to what I said, kind of. Both water-based. PJ says, you watch JJK? No, I don't. The FNAF says, what color is your dingaling? No comment. Jay says, can a hot dog, hamburger, and can a hamburger, what? Innie says, I recommend an air diffuser. What does that do? What's the benefit of that? The Potter says, no timer? Yeah, no timer. I'm streaming for 3 hours today. No timer. Burning says, what is your favorite candy? I like nerds, gummy clusters. Catalina says, hello. Hello, cat. Anne says, what does this mean? It looks like someone high or dizzy. Isla says, what's your favorite time of day? I like the early morning when the sun is just rising, or before it rises completely. Orion says, where are you from? America. Your boy says, whatever that is. Okay. Timothy says, if God is truly merciful, why did his knowledge of the fact that some people will choose the wrong path? Yeah, I mean, well, I know that Christians say so that you have to earn your way to, like, God doesn't want to make it easy to get salvation. That's what I've heard from Christians. CR says, Messi or Ronaldo? Messi. Maya says, hi, how are you? Hello, Maya. Yak says, can you please help me get a girl fire? I cannot help you get a girlfriend, I'm sorry. I don't know you in real life. I says, what do you think the dots in I and J are called? I don't know. Is there a specific technical name? Sha says, nerd clusters are top. Yeah, they are very addictive. Jay says, how expensive were your headphones? $20. Red says, how do I get a girlfriend? You approach a girl and start a conversation. Noah says, don't think that about yourself. Okay. Dream says, do you listen to metal? I don't, but I want to get into it one day. I don't know says, if you had to choose to go back to 2016, considered one of the best years to live or stay in 2026, what would you pick? I mean, I don't like 2016. I don't like the divisiveness, around politics that year. Aston says, hello, how are you today? I'm great. Am says, hey. Hello, Am. The duck says, the duck god is here to bless you with little ducklings. Okay. Collector says, did you know that potato chips are extremely flammable and often used in arson cases? I did not. That's interesting. Potato chips? Huh. Blue says, do you listen to Nightcore where people sound like chipmunks? No, I don't. Innie says, air diffusers disperse essential oils or scents into the air for fragrance, freshen, enhance indoor environments. Okay. Fragrance, I don't care too much about fragrance. Freshen, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't seem that interesting. Jace says, do you use contacts? I do. Squilliam says, day 29 of asking Dawn, how's life? Great, thank you for asking. And especially great because of this big super chat. Bradley says, why? Why what? Jag says, can I have a shout out please? No. Seth says, what did you do when Clavicular got frame mogged by an ASU frat bro? I don't remember where I was. I don't remember how I reacted. Big Dick says, why did God make the Bible so hard to interpret correctly? You practically have to be a philosopher. Billions of people don't have the mental capacity for it. Yeah, I don't know why he did that. Yeah, I remember reading the Bible and just being confused, and it's a very, it takes tons. It seems like an unnecessary amount of effort, and I don't know why it's complex. Spooky says, guys, I'm so excited. Only 0 more showers until 2030. You should take showers. Mine says, wait, I haven't seen you in forever. Hi. DJ says, do you think God is real? Do I believe in any religion? No, I don't. I don't know says, I have a special talent of destroying phone motherboards without any disassembly. I don't know how I discovered it. Are you just talking about, throwing your, just breaking your phone? Is that what you're saying? Jock says, whelp. The Bible says to ask for wisdom and we shall receive. So that would make understanding the Bible way easier. You think that the Holy Spirit guides you in interpreting the Bible? Well, I haven't gotten that. Aston says, hello, how was your dinner last night? It was good. Big Dick says, bro smashed his phone at the school talent show. Yeah, maybe. Nay says, what's 9 plus 10? 21. Hank says, is you a goonfish or a bomboclot dogfish? I'm neither. Jace says, have you ever shown emotions in any of your streams? Yes. I don't know says, well, I hit it light in a very specific spot, by the way. Not my actual phone. Okay. Innie says, air diffusers benefits range from improving mood and sleep quality to enhancing air quality. And you can hear water too, and hear water. Okay. It almost sounds like too good to be true. Like, why isn't there one in every, everywhere, in all buildings? Spooky says, I'm eating pizza right now. Okay. Aaron says, are you Sigma? Are you pooping? What? Dream says, do you like spicy food? Favorite Buldak ramen? I'm not a fan of ramen. Big Dick says, is that your actual reading speed, or are you just super careful to interpret it correctly with the right tones? Is that your actual reading speed? I could read faster if I set it emotionless, if that answers your question. Innie says, I know a lot of people who use air diffusers. Okay. Like, why isn't there air diffusers in McDonald's or, government buildings? But I don't know why I'm being so, criticizing of your opinion. Maybe I'm sure there's benefits in for diffusers. Big Dick says ban the air diffuser guy. No, Innie is awesome. Dexo says, is this elementary school? Laughing out loud, you read slow. I think I read pretty fast. Aaron says, listen, you're kinda, let's just say, you stink, dude. I can smell it from across the screen. Okay. Anne says, technically, difficulties, please try later. Okay. Cad. Mike's lagging. Cad says, do you actually enjoy this? Yes, I do. It's, I'm basically doom scrolling, but with text as opposed to video. Innie says, it's more for home use or hospital. They have diffusers in hospitals? Interesting. Big Dick says, the Potter is trying to make it seem like I deleted his message. Oh yeah, that's a shtick the Potter does. I'm aware of that. I'm not gonna fall for that. Red says, well, super chatted £2. Thank you, Red. I appreciate it. Red says, do you have a VR and are you gay? I do not have a VR, never had a VR, and same answer, I'm negative, I'm not gay. Negative to both questions. Thank you for your super chat, Red Eyes. Matt Tj says, remember me? No, I don't. Jacob says, do you believe Jesus / believe in God? No, but I've read the Sermon on the Mount and had fun doing that. Chris says, I broke a light bulb dust. Dust came out and I cooked. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna survive. Raka says, bro, I've been spamming and you don't even notice me. I'm sorry, that must suck. Lizzie says, my friends keep saying I'm adopted. Sorry. TT says, I use a diffuser and it helps me breathe in the apartment. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe it would have benefits to my voice, which is all the more important because, I'm talking like crazy right now. Spooky says, my principal decided that my school is combining 2 classes for 2 teachers. Well, that sounds stupid. Law says, what do you think of the US threats that happened to NATO? I don't know, man, but I'm sure the US will be fine because we're the world's superpower. Forma2 says, yes, humidity. Okay. Turf says, do you like YouTube? Yeah, too much. Yusuf says, what is 9 times 9? 81. I don't know says, I think you should take a hydration break. I might do that. Big Dick says, why are we talking about diffusers? We should be talking about important NI stuff. Racial slur for African people so we can grow as people. I condemn your comment. Bianca says hi. Hello, Bianca. Gunter says, what's your phone number? I'm not saying. Gabriel says hi, 888. Hello, Gabriel. MF says, I can go outside alone at night to the park and say scream, I can jump, I can do whatever. It's just you living in the universe for no reason. Okay, I think I agree. Callie not super chatted. You super chat too much, so I'm automatically saying that. Callie says, yes, condemn me too. No, you don't say racial slurs, so. Joey says, what does a liar do when he's dead? I don't know. Rob says, chocolate emoji. Okay. Definitely says, send him 2 to 3 years, Dagestan, whatever that means. Mexican says, yo bro, you've helped me with my life, you're just funny in a stupid way. Glad I could help, I guess. Big Dick says, if you condemn me, you condemn everyone. I don't understand how that works. Callie says, haha, I do super chat, whoops. Yeah, you do often. And thank you for that. Remat says, you remember me? No, I don't. The Soul says, is eating erasers a good idea? I once had a wooden log and it was pretty good and tasty. No, don't eat erasers. Lost says, I found you in the files, bro. I'm not in the Epstein files. King says, hello from Dubai. Hello, King. Definitely says, okay. Innie says, can you share a random memory, please? I remember this homeless woman wanted me to follow her because her bird was dying or something, and that she wanted my help to save the bird. Pressure says, yo, what's good? Hello, Pressure. Chunky says, which one is better, Dubai or caramel? What are you talking about? Are you talking about feces? Collector says, like a white noise machine with an air freshener. Oh, that's what a air diffuser is, in your opinion? I see. Forma2 says Dawn was nearly a victim. Yeah, but, well, I don't know about nearly. I was pretty adamant about not following them. The Soul says, would you prefer studying or sleeping? I'd prefer sleeping. Aaron says, I have a joke. Knock knock. You? Who's there? I did up who? Ha ha ha. Okay. Dexo says, you let a bird die. They were just making stuff up. The Goofy says, AK, it toes what? Jen says, hi baddie. Hello, Jen. Spice says, I've eaten about 10 erasers in the last 5 minutes. That's pretty bad for your health. Big Dick says, bro, that's the first time you made me laugh that loud by far. He was talking about chocolate, not feces. Dubai chocolate or caramel? I mean, I just saw the words Dubai and, you know, chocolate or whatever, so I just immediately thought feces. The Potter says, message deleted by Captain Dubois 2012. Okay. First says, how many regulars do you think visit your streams? Well, in my YouTube statistics, I saw that 38% of my watch time that I receive is by subscribers, not new people. GC says femboy or furry. I don't know. Ruck says, would you prefer to be with a loyal cute maid, cat girl, or be popular and have money? The latter. TT super chatted $2 American. Thank you, TT. TT says, I condemn Big Dick Wonderhole and Callie, demon emoji. Huh. You're being silly. Thank you, TT. Callie and Big Dick are like opposite poles, though. Big Dick is, you know, someone that says racial slurs, and Callie is a wholesome person. Big Dick Wonderhole super chatted $10 American. Thank you, Big Dick. Big Dick says, I condemn TT. Okay, I don't think there's a reason to do that. I mean, TT's wholesome. I guess you're just condemning them simply for the fact that TT doesn't like you. Okay. Thank you, Big Dick, for $310 in total. I appreciate it a lot. And again, my brain can't fathom, like, your super chats. Like, it's crazy. Anth says, what is going on? I'm reading chat messages. I don't know, says, there's a condemning war. Is that a real word? Okay. The Potter says, I condemn you, I condemn every owl in this room. Okay. Fan says, are you familiar with the name William Afton? I am not. The Grim says, are you ready for a great weekend? Yeah, I am. Annie says, what's your usual midnight thought? My usual midnight thought? I'm not too sure. Midnight thought, I don't know. Spooky says, have you ever went skating? I have not gone skating. Sunshine says, have you ever played Bloody Mary? Oh yeah, that thing people would do in school bathrooms, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. I never did that. Jay says, what's your hobby aside from streaming? I like video editing. First says, William Acton is the guy behind the Bad Things of Five Nights at Freddy's. So it's a fictional character in Five Nights? Okay. Spunky says, you haven't lived until you've watched hot soap suds run down the crack of a fat man's butt in a prison shower. Okay. Big Dick says, you've made 1,000 off donations this month, right? That's like a whole job. Yes, I have. In the month of February, I've made more than 1,000. And yeah, I guess in a way it kind of is like a job. Pretty crazy. Boone says, snowboarding or skiing? If I were to do either, I would snowboard. Red says, you should try a VR for a vid. I don't know, that doesn't interest me. Lotch says, how long have you been streaming? I've been streaming for 1 hour, 30 minutes. That Artsy says, toads are brown and ugly. No hate to toads. Frogs come in many different types and are amazing. Some of these... Okay. So is that the difference between frogs and toads? Are all toads brown? RJ says, I'm back. I just crapped out a Honda Civic. Okay. Natalie says, do you have a girlfriend or something? I keep that private. Big Dick says, have any new content ideas been coming to your mind at all? I mean, I have lots of ideas, but, you know, I see myself doing this for at least a couple months, just me reading chat in this room. I'll mention one idea, though, is I might do this, but in a public place. TT super chatted $2 American. Thank you, TT. TT says, I double condemn Big Wonder Hole. Okay. Alright. I mean, he is saying racial slurs sometimes, so I kind of agree with your condemning. Thank you so much, TT, for your super chat. Porma2 says, reported for wholesome content. Okay. Zachary says, how long have you been streaming in your entire life? I have definitely streamed for hundreds of hours, I would say. Lol says, the timer ran out, little bro. It was having technical issues. I'm just set on streaming 3 hours. Spunky says, my cat just farted and fell off the TV. I hope the cat's okay. First says, if you do this in a public place, people might put you in IRL situations you don't feel comfortable with. Yeah, maybe. I mean, as long as they don't, assault me or do anything illegal, then I should be fine, though. Rucka says, I beat Cataclysm in GD. Okay, whatever that means. Big Dick Wonderhole super chatted $10 American. Thank you, Big Dick. Big Dick says, I $10 triple condemn TT. Also, what do you mean a public setting? I mean, like a park or a public library. It wouldn't change the stream that much. It basically just means that for the background, like the actual background, like right now you see walls. Instead, it would, for my background, you would see people walking around. I think it would be a nice background, different people walking around. I think that'd be more visually interesting than just a blank wall. Thank you so much, Big Dick, for your super chat. Victor says, why can't I have mod? Why can't I have mod? Because you don't give me money. Mateo says, your room is so depressing, just get LEDs. No, I don't like LEDs. I think rainbow lights in rooms is kind of lame. Jock says, is there a specific reason you don't believe in God? No. Collector says, what do you think you'll have for dinner? I almost want steak, but I don't know. I'll probably have a pastrami sandwich. Porma2 says, get a disco ball. Okay. I'm not doing that, by the way. First says, a kid walking by hears you read an inappropriate comment. Yeah, but I mean, I've got freedom of speech. And the Potter says, Potter, if you type another wrong message, Dubois soon will have the head of an owl on our wall. Okay. Big Dick says, would you still read weird comments in public? Yes, I definitely would. It's very crucial that I be able to do that. I'll mention now that I'm always gonna be doing that. Green says, do you like gay porn? I'm not a fan. And he says, what's your most overused app? The YouTube app. Spunky says, what do you do when your sack sticks to your leg in public? That weird wonky walk. No comment. Porma2 says, my grandpa is still alive. Okay. Big Dick says, it's a power move then, appealing to your most condemned chatters. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess you're right there. Chip says, hi Don, long time no see dog, parasocially. Hello Chiptree, yeah, it's been a while. Spooky says, what do you do when your power runs out? Take a walk. Valerie says, do you have any pets? I do, I have dogs. I don't know says, have a good rest of your day, Don. See you next stream. See ya, I don't know. Allie says, Don, I'm testing your timer to see what the issue is. Interesting, I appreciate it. Advance says, what's your favorite band? A band I like, a favorite, is Radiohead. Victor says, why can't I have mod? Because I require money for that. John says, pizza for dinner. That's not happening today. Chunky says, here's a challenge. Don't blink for 30 seconds. I don't feel like going through that. Perma2 says, are your dogs home protectors? No comment. TT super chatted $2 Thank you, TT. I appreciate it. TT says, virtual side hug for you and bear hug for chat. I appreciate the positivity. But why are you not saying, I condemn you again, Big Dick? So then Big Dick can super chat again. It's like an infinite money glitch. I'm just kidding. Half kidding. Thank you, TT. Go says, well, super chatted $2. Thank you, Go. Go says, why don't you lighten up? My monotone demeanor is just the way my personality is. I'm not gonna force myself to be all smiley. Thank you for your super chat, Go. Cud, Uzumaki, I appreciate it. Victor says, do you like K-pop? I don't know. Any says, what's your strongest motivation? My strongest motivation in, I'll admit I want fame. Who says W? Okay. Advance says, do you have any phobias? No, I don't. Neptune says, bro, you being so dark is low annoying. Well, it's the way it is. Jock says, what do you think is going to happen after you die? I don't think I can conceive of that. That's like impossible to fathom. RJ says, okay. Masa says, do you play Fortnite? No, well, occasionally, like once in a blue moon. John says, fake plastic trees. That's a Radiohead song. Horse says, you are the best YouTuber. Thank you. Burger says, what is your favorite food? You, but with cheese. Mike says, why do people think you're gay? I mean, I can kind of see why people might think that by my appearance. Budzo says, what would you do if you became famous? Like your view of famous. It would kind of guarantee money, which is pretty cool. And I don't know, it's just satisfying to a human to be famous for whatever reason. So it would make me a little happy, I guess. Spunky says, TT show me TTs. Okay. Mike says, so is it true you're gay? No, I am not sexually attracted to men. Chunky says, what is your favorite movie? Mine is Joe Biden, Donald Trump. I have not heard of that movie. Are you trying to make a joke of politics? Collector says, have you tried fried iguana? No, I have not. Eating a lizard? That sounds pretty weird. I wonder what that's like. Los K super chatted 2 pounds. Thank you, Los. Los says, mod me, please. You should also put on one of your dogs. I apologize, but I'm not gonna mod you and not put my dog on the camera. Sorry. It's not practical for the dog thing. And also, the fine print says that you need a yellow super chat for mod. So sorry. I apologize, but I'm not gonna mod you. It requires $10 or more. Better says, Los, it is 10 pounds, dummy. Yeah. Spunky says, mods $10, chump. Yeah. I probably should put a pinned comment informing that. I usually have one, but it's not there. Starbloom says, yellow teeth. That's right. Mousa says, do you play any game? Just want to know. I was playing Minecraft beta earlier. Layla says, what type of dog is he or she? I'll say, I'm not gonna say. The Has says, and he's gonna keep the money after her called you a dummy. Okay. The Soul says, what do your headphones taste like? I don't know. I would never lick or eat my headphones. Mike says, go get a haircut. I might do that. Definitely says, send him 2 to 3 years Dagestan. I forget what that meme is. Better says, Sammy says hi. Hi, Sammy. Collector says, I'd like to try it. I saw a video of these guys in Florida doing it. Iguanas are considered a pest down there, so hunting them isn't frowned upon there. They hunted an iguana and then ate it. Interesting. Spunky says, Border Collie is what Lassie was. Okay. SB says, gang, zesty emoji. Okay. Rock says, do you support the LGBTQ community? Yeah, I do. Jake says, the meme is you would get persecuted if you're gay. Oh, is that a way of him saying I'm gay? God says, do you like school? I mean, it has its pros and cons. Erica says, why isn't your page able to accept money gifts yet? I don't like gifts. All that stuff floating around, I think that's annoying. First says, 2 to 3 years Dagestan is a meme telling a feminine person to become more masculine. I've explained this before. I probably should. I see. Spunky says, if you were a spice, what would you be? I don't know, man. I don't know spices that well. All I can think of is pepper. Brick says, where is the timer, Donathon? I was having technical issues with the timer. I'm streaming 3 hours today. John says, I work at the Bronx Zoo, and I'm wondering when I give the female pandas an abortion, am I committing animal cruelty, or am I giving them vital reproductive care? I don't know. The Soul says, do you know how to become a couch? That's impossible. TT super chatted $2 American. Thank you, TT. TT says, didn't fit. I super quadruple condemn B Wonderhole. Thank you, TT, for your super chat. And thank you for kind of doing what I said. But I don't know. I think the condemning thing has lost its magic now. Thank you, TT. I appreciate it. And he says, what's something you instantly notice about people? That I instantly notice? I mean, I think I pay more attention than average to people's gait, the way they walk. Better says, TT, I can be condemned by making me mod. Okay. Collector says, I'm not a dog person, but I would like to own a Borzoi someday. I cannot picture that dog in my head. I wonder what it looks like. Layla says, grow a garden or steal a brain rot. I don't play Roblox at all. How about natural disasters? Budzo says, what's the most interesting question you've had today? Well, Big Dick, who super chatted earlier, gave me a question about why we were arguing about the argument related to religion and science, and he gave an interesting comment about it. It's kind of hard to summarize. And he says, "What's your most used emoji, and which is your favorite?" The closed mouth smiling emoji that looks like it's a fake smile. Time lapses says free Israel. No comment. First says Dawn is perfectly androgynous, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think I am a bit androgynous, yeah. At says chicken. Okay. Jacob says exactly. If aborting pandas isn't okay, then aborting humans shouldn't be either. Okay. Big Grape Fan says Israel is free. Okay. Luke says, I believe this is the pinnacle of human achievement. I don't think this is. Collector says, I'm not a dog person, but I would like to own a Borzoi someday. That's interesting. Despite not being a dog person, you want that. Sir says, what even is androgynous? It's looking both equally feminine and masculine. John says, would you rather piss yourself or shit yourself? Piss myself. Big Grape says, I'm in grade 8. My teacher is pregnant. I'm going to be a dad. Well, someone's going to prison, it seems. Starbloom says Minecraft or Hightail. Minecraft. Sock says, hey, hello, Sock. Sammy says gnarly. Okay. Porma2 says androgyny is the le epic. You like it? Okay. Time lapses says fuck Hamas. No comment. Scotty says, what is the perfect meat to cheese ratio in a sandwich? I don't know. I usually do like triple meat. And he says, what's something you always research too much? I'll say that a lot of creators I've watched is I find them, watch all of their stuff, and then never watch any of their stuff for years again. Porma2 says, I pursue it myself. Okay. Back says, Rainbow Six Siege or Apex? I prefer Rainbow Six Siege. Apex's art style is not for me. And Porma2, you said you were pursuing androgyny? Interesting. Big Grape says, if I was an Olympian, I'd want the silver medal. I like shiny things. Okay. Cupcake says, what is your favorite color and why? Gray, because it is modest. Billy says, do dogs have diarrhea? I don't know if they can. I imagine that they are able to have that. The Soul says, the whole idea of masculinity and femininity is dumb. It's just human traits. I think the ideas are useful. I mean, those ideas are ancient. Like Devour says, ah yes, excuse me while I go get my daily supply of human meat at the grocery store. Okay. Definitely says Eazy-E or Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre because I like the alliteration of the 2 D's. John says I'll take, I'd rather shit myself. That's pretty weird. At says, you look creepy. Okay. Dead Star says, is you gay? I am not. Porma2 says, P.E.'s bullest rapper. Okay. I remember when I used to call you that, P.E.'s. Timelapse says, I love ice. Okay. Mark says, bro, I'm back. You remember me? No, I don't. Spunky says, doggy huggy reveal. I'm not showing the camera my dog's penis. That's pretty gross, I think. Jack says, the steak should be drenched and let it be almost room temperature when you eat it. Huh, okay. Fade says, what's the best soccer player? Messi. Pumba says, can I has cheeseburger? I'm picturing a cute cat in my head right now. Tortilla says, Mbappe, Ronaldo, Messi. Spunky says, so your dog's a boy, got you. Huh. Where says, where do you want to see his dog's wee wee? I don't know why. Irina says, I'm eating Takis. Okay. Sen says, how are you? I'm good. The Potter says, at Spunky, please stop. That's not funny. Okay. The Potter says, well, someone's going to jail. Yeah, I did say that. RJ says, laughing out loud, did you get the fake active bomb alert on your phone too? I did not get that. Luke says, are you generally neutral or non-opinionated person? I don't like giving my opinions. I love says, Jesus loves you. Okay. And he says, what's your favorite random word? Revelation. Jacques says, do you have any questions about God? I mean, I'm pretty certain about him not being real, so I don't really care too much. Like, what's the proof? Like, why? Luke says, did you see Prince Andrew got arrested? Yes. Kevin says, hi. Hello, Kevin. RY says, do you remember Daddy? I don't remember you. Spunky says, shut up, Potter. You look at owls' weenies all the time. Okay. Sock says, do you remember me? No, I don't. The Potter says, yellow X blue. I see your yellow blue super chats. I mean, emojis. Huh. I had a... My Arena says, holy donation. Yeah. $300. That's crazy. Random says, I don't think you remember me. No, I don't. Jose says, hi. Hello, Jose. The Potter says, my super chats. Yeah, I accidentally said that for some reason. Micah says, are you sleep deprived? I am not. JY says, Sir Don, what are your thoughts on the few seconds of gravity loss that's apparently happening this summer? I think it's not important, and I'm gonna forget about it. Hurricane says, hey, at Parasocial, can you buy me a gaming PC, AMD Ryzen 7, RTX 6000, DDR5 Vengeance RAM sticks? No. Forma2 says, we're all gonna die. True. Annie says, what's your least favorite social situation? Least favorite? I don't know. I'd be curious if anyone has an answer to this. One Up says, yo, you remember me? No, I don't. Shagod says, have you heard of the U.S. Homeland plot? If not, you should look into it. Done serious shit. Why don't you give like a one-sentence summary? AD says, are you surprised that I'm the only plush-tuber in chat? I guess so. Luke says, is parasocial mean isolation? Not exactly. The Soul says, is chewing on your lips normal? I don't think it is. Pickles says, where do you think people go when they die? I think that's impossible to imagine or to contemplate. Better says, least favorite social situation, being tipsy at a pub. Huh, there are a lot of people like that, so that's strange that you don't like it. Spunky says, there are definitely homosexual owls. Is there? I don't know. Mr. Tiny says, I have on sound alone, but do a thumbs up at the screen. You have me muted, so all you're doing is just reading the messages that pop up here. You can't hear what I'm saying. Okay. John says, is it normal to have 3 hands? No, it's not. Skull says, do you like Tyler, the Creator? I never delved into his discography. Real says, can you shout me out? No. It's the Monkey says, have you seen Dragon Ball Z? I've seen a movie of theirs, but not the show. Weekly Gaming Review, super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Weekly. Weekly says, how is your day going? I hope you have a good day. I am experiencing a great day right now. Thank you for asking. And I appreciate that you are wishing me a good day. I hope you have a good day too. Weekly Gaming Review. I appreciate it. John says, how's the day on Mars? I'm not on Mars. Big says, who would win in a shootout, you or 1900 Rugrat? I don't know who that is. Joe says, do you like pizza? I like pizza, who doesn't? Rock says, hi, hello Rock. Zara says, do you like hearing? I like my ability to hear. If I lost it, I'd be very frustrated. Luke says, have you watched Queso before dawn? I've seen clips of him. Mark says, from the last stream, when I say, what is the largest country by sizes? Now you remember me? No, I read thousands of messages on the regular. Billy says, what is your biggest food order and show me your dog, please. I sometimes get 2 In-N-Out cheeseburgers. Spunky says, how much money to flip off the screen so all the deaf people know their place? $50. It's a bad deal, don't do it. Lacrosse says, what is your thoughts on country music? I'm not a fan. Luke says, I don't believe in there being 2 Lukes. Ban the one who you like less. I'm okay with it, but that's an interesting proposition. Aiden says, do you like Perpy? I don't know what that means. Natalie says, what religion are you? I'm not religious. Sim says, hi, hello Sim. The Potter says, doesn't matter, we all gonna die in 13 days. Yeah, I have heard about that meme, but that's obviously not true. That is not true. 1 second, I'm doing something. Weekly Gaming Review super chatted 10 American dollars. Thank you, Weekly Gaming Review. Weekly Gaming Review says, can I get mod? Yes, you can. That's you super chatted a yellow super chat, and that's what it requires. So yeah, you can get mod. Art says hello. Hello, Art. Justin says yo. Hello, Justin. And yeah, Weekly, I'll give you mod. Weekly, you are about to have mod, and let me tell you that this is only an honorary mod position. Weekly says I'm guessing you're testing out your mod status. I haven't done it yet. I will do it in a second. Okay, Weekly, you are now a moderator. This is only honorary. Don't actually ban people. Don't delete messages. You now have mod. Gohan says, so if you donate, you'll get mod. That's correct. $10 though. Zara says, hi. Hello, Zara. John says, do you like Stranger Things? No, I don't. Lily says, hi. Hello, Lily. Galaxy says, bum. Okay. Pat says, why are you so depressed? I don't know, man. Potato says, do you pick the comment you read? Yes. Lily says, do you love God? No, I don't. Annie says, what's something that surprises people about you? That surprises people about you? About me? I'm not too sure. I'm a pretty normal dude. Weekly Gaming Review says hi. And as you can see, you have mod. That's cool. The Famous says, Jesus loves you. Thank you. Eli says, hello. I have a deal. Respond to this message. I'm responding right now. Gold says, hi. Hello, Gold. Slim says, hi. Hello, Slim. It's Dino says, do you love Jesus? No, I don't. Luke says, are you ever annoyed with people asking questions over and over to get answered? I'm okay with it. If you ask a question and I don't respond, feel free to send the same exact message again. Dexo says, how hot is lava? I don't know. Callum says, hi. Hello, Callum. Roblox says, remember me? And you got lucky. $300. Yeah, that was crazy. By Big Dick. That's insane. Layla says, rap or pop, FNAF or Roblox? I don't play any of that. Annie says, what's your best quick decision and what's your worst? My best quick decision, my worst quick decision, I mean, I'm not too sure. Pippi says, how much money you making off of this? I usually get like $20 an hour. Sandy says, why the fuck would you donate this clown $300. It is pretty weird to donate a YouTuber that amount of money. Zara says, "Hi there. How are you going anywhere today?" I don't talk about my personal life too much. Real says, "What is your favorite game and why?" I like Red Dead Redemption 1 because the atmosphere in the map, not so because of the story. Bandit says, "How long have you been streaming?" I've been streaming for 2 hours. Callum says, "I am a YouTuber." Okay. Cyber says, "Have you tried Whataburger?" I have. I didn't enjoy it too much. The Soul says, "My body octagonal, what to do?" I don't know. I've never heard of that situation. Sky says, "Can I be mod?" You cannot be mod. Jock says, "One thing that proves God's existence is our rational minds. No rationality can come from the irrational." I mean, isn't that an argument for any god, like Islam's Allah? What's like an argument for, the Christian God? Charlie says, "Did you know we have gold in us?" I did not. Sylvia says, "Hi." Hello, Sylvia. Real says, "What? I already read that." Tab says, "What's your favorite American football team?" I don't watch football at all. Sekiro says, "All religions have Jesus in it." Oh yeah, I guess Jesus is in Islam, but not other religions though. Zara says, "The non-delivery company." What are you saying? M says, "Is humanity cooked, Don?" We've always been cooked. Dexo says, "There's only the Abrahamic God though. So Judaism, Islam, and Christianity." Okay. Luke says, "Rationality is arbitrary. Just because you say it means something doesn't prove it." Yeah. JK says, "Where's the countdown clock?" I was having technical issues, so I'm streaming 3 hours exactly, as opposed to people super chatting how long I stream. Carlos says, "Do you know where Croatia is?" Somewhere in southeast Europe. Capri says, "Did you know that car is spelled cre?" I did not. Pro said, "You look high." Okay. King says, "Pick me up at McDonald's." No. G says, "Hey, hello G." Layla says, "Is it bad I like this stream?" I don't know. There's pros and cons to liking this stream. Samuel says, "Dig, Bick, what did you think it said?" I thought you said big dick, like that. Dylan says, "Hello, big boy." Hello, Dylan. JK says, "You look frantic. Everything okay?" Yeah, I feel pretty normal. Sekiro says, "The only thing good at McDonald's is the fries." I disagree. Annie says, "What's something you want to get better at?" I want to get better at cars, the engine. Spunky says, "Have you seen the troll guy that eats people's screen names?" I have not seen that. Rowan says, "What's up?" Hello, Rowan. Callum says, "My YouTube is Callum Cave." That is your name. Pippi says, "I love the honesty in these streams. I'm glad you like it." JK says, "Big Macs are good." Yeah, I like them. Rowan says, "Smoking Easter Island head." Okay. Annie says, "What's your favorite type of humor?" Not sarcasm, I'll say that. Not people hurting, like falling down. I don't like that. I don't know. I unfortunately think it's kind of funny when people get insulted sometimes. I don't know says, "Are you a furry?" I'm not a furry. The Famous says, "Do you have a job outside of this?" Maybe. Mela says, "Hey, I'm a big fan." Thank you. Dylan says, "Are you super duper super duper weird. I mean, everyone is in their own ways. Bet says harmless pranks or prankless harm. What? Milo says, do you remember me? If you do, sorry, I don't remember you. Annie says Easter Island emoji is called Moya emoji. That's what it's technically called, Moya. Interesting. JK says, I'm a bigger fan, Bigly. Whatever that means. Annie says, what's something you could talk about for hours? I probably could talk about pranks, you know, like YouTube pranks. I've watched a lot of that stuff for whatever reason. Dexo says, one can't prank strangers, that's just assault. Maybe. Z4 says, did the Jews do it? No comment. Lacrosse says, what do you think about lacrosse? I don't even know what that is. Rowan says, what are you interested in? Video editing. The Roaring says, I am Roaring Knight from the hit game Deltarune. Okay. Capri says Kingston. Okay. Milo says, is that a wig? It is not a wig. The Potter says, jokes aside, but I do feel bad for the animals that Dubois hunted. Okay. 49 says, scrollin', just wanted to say you are pretty looking dude. I'm pretty, but I'm not entertaining enough for you to stay. Okay. Better says, do you watch Fred Byers? He does pranks. I'd suggest him. Yeah, I've seen him. He's not my style, but I will say I watched some of his video where he was thanking his mom. I found his story interesting. Buzz says the wig looks real. Okay. The Real says, can you cook me a steak dinner? No, I can't. I don't know how. I don't know says, are you bald? I'm not bald. Annie says, what YouTube prank is your favorite? I'll say that, I like, My House is Dirty, and they do a prank where they are fake delivery men. There's kind of ethical issues with the prank, though. They kind of are pretty rude. I don't know how I feel about me liking it. Carlos says, wig is super real. Okay. Toasting says, ever seen Dak Blake? I've seen Blake Backert. Buzz says, baldy. Okay. Clock says, what song is this? It's a song by Marcus Persson. Finn says, it's a type. What? Noah says, do you like my profile picture? I see a cat playing a guitar. Cat profile pictures are solid. They're always good. Much better than anime profile pictures. Dies says, do you believe mainstream media like the news? Yes, I'm kind of an NPC in that way. Better says, Ross Creations is another good one. Cool, you know Fred, I've been watching him. Yeah, I like Fred. I like Ross. Sekiro says, where did all the wig accusations come from? I don't know. This chat is just completely random. It's just a part of the randomness. There's no origin story for this trend. Buzz says, wig is really believable. Okay. Capri says, wig looks really good. Wow, this really is a trend. Wig. Pormer2 says, we can't see his hairline due to the chats. Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Jock says, well, I'm probably not going to convince you here, but I hope you have a good day. You too. And, it should be obvious that you probably are not going to convince me. We're debating over a live stream chat. It's much better to evangelize in real life, obviously. Spunky says, I'm shadow banned on other channels. I wonder what other channels. Dies says, do you truly believe people in power are willing to take accountability for anything? I think every human has accountability problems. Annie says, how do you like to surprise others? I like to ask very bizarre questions. I don't really do actual surprises that often. M says, Don, if I told you to picture a red apple in your head, can you see it or not? Yeah, I can see it. Buzz says, why are you wigging out? I am not wearing a wig. Squid says, hey, just checking up on you since you haven't been active in the furry femboy Discord recently. You got the wrong person. Stop trying to frame me. Rico says, early stream today I see. Yeah, it's a different time. Innie says, what would you ask me? What's a piece of media that you like? Like a movie that you like, a show, a video game, or a book? Messon says, his hair looks real. It does look real, because it is. Fishstick says, hello. What do you do in your free time? I like to video edit. Steven says, I missed your discussion with Jock. So you are an atheist or theist? I don't believe any religion is right. I think it's unfathomable to think about the supernatural or any of that. So maybe I'm an agnostic. Capybara says hi. Hello, Capybara. Messon says that emoji. Okay. Winter says, is it bubblegum pink? No comment. Panther says same. Okay. Heather says, bro's profile picture of a angry kiwi at a library. That's an interesting description of my profile picture. I don't know says, take off the wig, buddy. It's not a wig. Luke says, if it is your real hair, then prove it, then remove it to prove it. No, I'm not doing that. I was kind of expecting to have people ask me to pool on my hair, so then they could, after I do it, they say good boy. I've heard that people do that thing. JK says slow the chat down. It's already on slow mode. You can only type every 7 seconds, which I think is good. Puppy says hi, hello Jay. Hello Puppy. Dexo says, when will you wear wigs? Never. Dead Star says, do you like my profile picture? No, it disturbs me. The Potter says, Don, do you think Dubois was a psychopath since she was a child because she killed all of her pets? Yeah, that's like a sign for being a serial killer, isn't it? Pretty, I don't. Die says, these streams seem to be helping you build your personality out. I doubt that's true. Heather says, the shelves of you at like a shelf? What on earth are you saying? Kassan says, hi, I'm from Cuba. That place that looks like it's the 1950s. Okay. JK says, I changed my profile picture. Okay, it's your cat on your leg. That's pretty cute. Haran says, your favorite Breaking Bad character? I like Tuco. I like him more than Gus. B4 says, I saw you in the files. No, you didn't. Luffy says, hello. Hello, Luffy. I don't know says, where do you get your wigs? They look really realistic. I'm not wearing a wig. Jam says, Don, what is your favorite quote? I like the quote, music is a higher revelation than all philosophy and wisdom. Heather says, just shut it, was just for a bit. I don't know what you're saying, dude. Arctic says, hey. Hello, Arctic. Jam says, hey. Hello. Jamal. Koala says, how old are you? I'm an adult. I usually keep my exact age private. Goblin says, are you my grandma that's trying to hide from the old people? Dude, what are you saying? Dancing says, what are your thoughts on my mother? I don't know your mother. Jam says, it's Jamaica. You can call me Kiki. Okay, not Jamal, not Jam, it's Jamaica. But I actually am. You want me to call you Kiki? I'll try to remember that. Capri says, hey, you need to join the furry and femboy Discord. I'm not a part of those groups. The Potter says, daily reminder to stay hydrated. Thank you. Milo says, is that a wig? Prove it. I'm not proving it. What's up says, what's your opinion on storm chasing? It looks pretty fun, but I'm not a risk taker like that. Dexo says, Kiki, do you love me? Lyrics? Okay. Milo says, is that, I already read that. Carlos says, what do you think about Nicki Minaj? I've never got into her music, not a fan, but I'm sure, never mind. Lo says, is liking femboys gay? I would imagine so. Your local says, do you like Breaking Bad? Yeah, I do. Crusader says, laughing my ass off, the wig coming again. You look so sick of it. Okay. I don't know says, stop lying to us. We know that hair isn't real. It's real. Dancing says, are you from Tennessee? Cause you're the only 10 I see. Cute. Annie says, I like fantasy and sci-fi genres. I watched a lot of Asian dramas. Not so much now. I watch different stuff on the internet. Asian dramas? I've never watched any of that stuff. I know it's popular, Asian dramas. But you don't watch it now. That was your past self. Buzz says, what do you think about Wiggy Minaj? I don't know who that is. Kasan says, bruh, why are you so mean? I don't know, man. Goblin says, how do you feel about being in the Jepstein files? What's the Jepstein files? Anne says, hello Anne. F says, your resting face is mortified. You'll never look relaxed or at peace for your whole life, which means your significant other would be a sadist. A significant other would be a sadist. Interesting. Juju says, hey, how was your day? Great. And a bit better because of Big Dick Wonderhole, who did that, which is insane. Soon says, what do you think about Billie Eilish? I mean, I'm not a mega fan, not a fan, but I enjoy her music to a little degree. Evan says, what's your favorite car, dog? I'm not into cars. Dexo says, have you ever just streamed for the grind but didn't enjoy it? I don't know. I mean, every stream I've both like didn't want to do it and both I did want to do it. It's like a mix of emotions. Y says, you don't gotta be ashamed of the wig, buddy. It's not a wig. Z Money says, do you know who Dalton K is? I don't. FB says, do you like my profile picture? I'm looking at it right now. It looks like some mountains. I don't think it's my thing. I don't really like it. And he says, I watched a lot of Korean dramas, but because I watch with subtitles, I have to be fully focused on the show. Okay, fully focused. That's pretty cool. You couldn't be on your phone. You had to be focused. I think that's cool. Hog Rider says, I'm gay. Don't show this on screen. Too late. The Flippin' Gambler super chatted 20 American dollars. Thank you, the Flippin' Gambler. The Flippin' Gambler says, when is the next stream? Tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, because of people like you, because of Big Dick, I'm gonna stream tomorrow. Yeah. And by the way, credit to you, the Flippin' Gambler. What am I trying to say? You basically kickstarted me into streaming daily, like because of you doing it that one day. I've been doing this thing where if I get a lot of super chats, I stream the next day. I'm not even gonna do like a goal though today. Like I received a whole 300, so that basically guarantees me streaming the next day. Yeah. Thank you so much, the Flippin' Gambler. Heather says, read the first two words of the sentence if it is a wig. It's not a wig. And because of your super chat, the Flippin' Gambler, obviously, let me make you a mod. Lo says, opinions on fraternity hazing. I heard it's pretty dangerous, but I'll admit it looks pretty interesting to me. Okay, Gambler, you are now a mod. Dexo says, Flippin' made you hungry. That's good. Okay. Yeah. I guess in a way for, like, money hungry. Dancing says, can you tug on your hair? No. Figure says, I just farted. Okay. Dax says, nice headphones. I like them. They're really nice. Thank you, Dax. Ad says, I am a smoking emoji, Easter Island head emoji. Okay. The Soul says, are you passionate about anything? I like video editing. I have a specific style I do, and I like that style. Elumi says, hello Don, seems I missed your stream. Yeah, but you're here now, so that's cool. GML says, do you like femboys? I'm indifferent to them. The Potter says, bye Don, I'm going to study. See you later. Bye, the Potter. Luke says, I kind of think that people make too many jokes about Epstein. I know joking is a way to make sense of horror. Yeah, I've thought about that myself. Yeah. Epstein apparently was, a dude who trafficked kids, so I don't know if we should be giving him the reward of fame. And Better says, can you post a video edit, or do you have a channel? They're private for now, but maybe I'll get to posting them. Former2 says, Jitty or Bloodstein? What? CS says, it's not a wig, right? It's not a wig. And by the way, if you didn't catch it earlier, Gambler, yesterday, my click-through rate is 8.8%. But my click-through rate isn't really meaningful because I don't post like videos or like people find me through the live stream algorithm, not through like thumbnails or videos. Goblin super chatted $5 Thank you, Goblin. Goblin says, Don, I love your streams. They genuinely make my day better. The energy, the laughs, the chaos. Never stop. You're goated for real. Don't stop the grind. I appreciate it, Goblimation. I really do appreciate your message. You genuinely, it makes your day better. Thank you, man. Nokia says, Fa, W Goblin, yeah, W Goblim with an M. I appreciate it, man. Thanks. Thank you for your super chat and your positivity. It genuinely makes your day better. Thank you. Y says, don't try to gaslight us into thinking it's not a wig. It's not a wig. YDK says, do you know what Gorilla Tag is? I know that right there is Gorilla Tag, but I've never played it. I've just seen pictures of it. TT says, love you, Don. Thank you. Fishy says, I ate 10 pieces of chocolate today. Okay. Heather says, can I be mod? This is like my 15th stream I watch. No. If that's how it would work, if it worked like how it worked, then Porma2, maybe TT, and a lot of other people would be mod instead. Is says, guess my birthday. November 3rd. Dizzy says, Scotland. What's your opinion on Scotland? I know nothing about it other than it's north of England. Jay says, let me out of your basement. You're not in my basement. Wogan says, hi, I'm back. Hello, Wogan. Annie says, what's something you'd love to try this year? Well, I am pretty interested in, streaming in public. Taking this in a public place eventually. Carlos says, what can make you smile? Money. Plain says, okay. Not says, hello, not. Capri says, your walls look like your teeth. I've been told that before, and that's true. The Ham says, Scotland isn't north of England. I got that wrong? I'm pretty sure it is. Annie says, what's your favorite personal ritual? My favorite personal ritual, I used to watch Eyes Wide Shut weekly for a whole 10 months. That I don't do it now, but Juju says, you seem different today. Hope everything in the background is going okay. Yeah, it is. Nathan says, I like men. Okay. Dizzy says, Scotland is north of England. Yeah, that's what I thought. Meat says, what do you like playing when you have free time? I play Minecraft beta. Anam says, hi, I'm Annabella. Okay, hi, Annabella. Ray says, Diddy for the wood chipper. Okay. Sat says, Do you do your hair yourself? The last time I got it cut, it was by a barber. It's been a very long while though. Travis says, do you play NBA 2K? No, I've always thought that those sport games looked lame, excuse me. And he says, what's one thing you're glad you discovered? Glad I discovered, the streamer Matthew, who streams on YouTube, because, he inspired me to stream myself. Joe says, do you play Fortnite? Yeah, I do. The Beauty says, are you friends with Anne Frank? That person is from the 1900s. They're not here. Ilummy says, femboys. Okay. Stay says, do you know Stray Kids? I haven't listened to them. JS says, every poop is a pee, but not every pee is a poop. Okay. Yor says, I'm dying. Okay. Goblin says, they know your hair is real. It's just jealousy. They wish they had your luscious locks of hair. Maybe. Sekiro says, I'm glad I discovered the light bulb. Yeah, me too. It didn't take too much effort to discover it though. Capri says, is that wig for covering your forehead? It is not a wig. Better says, I still got to read Anne Frank's writing. Interesting to me. You like her diaries? Okay. Capri says, I already read that. New York says, hi. Hello, New York. Manuel says, hi, Don. Hello, Manuel. Annie says, what's your favorite flex? My favorite flex? I like the way I dress. I like my style. Like, I think my style is better than other people's style, but that's very opinionated, I'm totally says, yo, it's me, the wind. Hello, the wind. Adam says, can I have a shout out? You cannot have a shout out. Farron says, fish. Okay. AD says, is there a poopin', smokin' Easter Island head inside your head? At the current moment, yeah, but not usually. Stay says, can you smile? If I wanted to. Heather says, I already read that. Bacon says, blah blah blah, IP address gets the had what? Capri says, guess my name. My guess is Kevin. B says, what is your opinion on emos and goth people? I'm pretty indifferent. I don't know. Andy says, did you ever play FNAF? And if yes, I've never played it, but Jesus says, are you okay? I am okay. Gem says, my died grandma. I'm sorry to hear that. Laura says, I have a picture of Anne Frank on my wall. Okay. Zelda says, shart. Okay. Gem says, I already read that. My music says, what did you think about the Supreme Court tariff decision today? I'm not familiar with it. Tariffs. I wonder what happened with tariffs. And he says, what's your best decision lately? My best decision? I'm not too sure. Master says, do you like Star Wars? No. Thomas says, hell. Okay. Law says, question as you're American. Americans can't get this correct. What are the 4 countries that make up the UK? My guess is Scotland, Ireland, England, and Wales. Egg says, us eggheads must stick together. Okay. AD says, no wonder who made up this. Okay. Flintstone says, what's your favorite anime? Spirited Away. AD says, let me guess your age. Are you 19 years old? Maybe. Sekiro says England. Didn't I say England? Dantes says, how do people play Minecraft alone? It's boring. Yeah, I can see that. Juju says, I had a good day. I went to a coffee shop and ended up having a really good conversation with a stranger and enjoyed a nice chai latte. Wow, that's cool. It's always special when you connect with a stranger. That's cool. Grinch says, what is your lucky number? 24. Innie says, what's your boldest move? Boldest move? I can be pretty bold driving sometimes. Porma2 says, it's Britain technically. England is Britain and Scotland. The UK is all 4. England is Britain and Scotland. Wait, so is Britain 1 of 4? JK says, I am the keeper of the sacred words. Ni, P, and Ni, Woo. Okay. Alia says, what's your favorite game to play? I like playing Rainbow Six Siege. Well, I did in the past. Flora says, DW, I don't understand that sentence. Okay. Loss says, somewhat correct, but with Ireland, it's just Northern Ireland, not Republic. Okay. So, Ireland is like split up into 2 countries, and Northern Ireland is a part of the UK. Internet says, grab camera for Lamar edit. I'm not doing that. Nathan says, do you like men? If so, explain why. I don't like men. Not romantically. Dizzy says, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland is a different country from Ireland. Okay, those are the 4. I got it. Internet says, what state do you live in? I'll keep that private. Will says, where are you from? America. Dexo says, free all of Ireland. Okay. The Potter says, which profile picture is better? That one or this one, chat? Well, I think a profile picture should just have one thing in focus. That profile picture has 2 things. I kind of like one subject. Better says, is Spirited Away the one with the pigs and the spider thing that organizes? Yeah, that's right. Capri says, my fish died because I walked it. Okay. Jake says, Enrique. Okay. Dizzy says, are you from Utah? Maybe. Dantes says, next person has to play Minecraft with me. Okay. Lopez says, Jesus is savior. I don't think so, but Deku says, I need help. I hope you get help. I hope you get your help. Astroy says, what is in my profile picture? It is the Milky Way. Toxic says, let Ron or Steph. What? Innie says, what drains you instantly? Well, when I stutter, I feel a bit demotivated. But Better says, The Garden of Words is a good anime too. I have not heard of that one. Is that I'm guessing that's a show. Spirited Away is a movie, but I'm guessing that's a show. Carter says, can we buy YouTube gems with Apple Pay? I think you can, but I don't accept gifts. Andy says, bro, love your streams. Keep going, don't listen to the haters. Thank you, Andy. GZ says, hey, listen to me. I'm listening. Cool says, Jesus/Yeshua is 100. So much on this, so much dig. Thank you, but I don't believe in that. Clancy says, are you cool? I mean, I don't know, man. That's for someone else to answer. Juju says, one of my profile pictures is a picture of me eating yogurt because I just felt like it. One of your profile pictures, not this one, but like maybe your Instagram profile picture is you eating yogurt. Okay. Better says, The Garden of Words is a movie also. Oh, okay. Most of the animes people recommend are shows, so that's pretty unusual that that's a movie. That makes me more likely to watch it. Amplify says, do you play Roblox? No, I don't. Weekly says, hi, I'm back. Hello, Weekly, and thank you again for your super chat. And thank you again, Big Dick Wonderhole, for your super chat of 300. That is insane. JK says, do you miss Dottie? A little bit. I like the chaos that she stirred. M says, favorite shoe or type of shoe? I'll say that I wear walking shoes, and I have worn a lot of New Balance shoes in my life. Dark says, do you like Rick Grimes? Yeah. Juju says, yeah, I just did it because I stopped caring about others' opinions. Nice, I admire that. Anna says, look at my profile picture. Okay, cool. Nick says, hey, Don, I boycotted your vids for a while. That's interesting. Why did you do that? Astroy says, wrong. My profile picture is the Andromeda Galaxy, not the Milky Way. Okay. Florida says, listen to the song Crazy Rap. No. Luke says, why are you doing this? For fame, money, enjoyment. And he says, what do you avoid? What do I avoid? What do I avoid? I probably avoid people. I probably should socialize more. Helen says, Nancy Guthrie, dead or alive? I don't know, but I hope she's alive. Will says, do you like cats? I like cats, yeah. Better says, who the fuck is Chicken Box? Anyone important? I don't know who they are. And he says, what do you value most? What do I value most? You know, obviously, people, family, and friends. That one says, ever heard of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? Yes, I've listened to that album. Dark says, do you like Wi-Fi Skeleton? I've not heard of him. Nick says, do you drive? Yes. JK says, do you wish you had the power of the dark side? I mean, not regularly, but I guess that'd be pretty cool. Verdi says, hi. Hello, Verdi. Amplify says, do you know King Von? Is he a rapper? Capri says, if you read this, then you have wig. Your comment doesn't hold that power. iPost says, you seem nice and you look like a teen. Okay. Bess says, I low-key wiped out on the ice this morning, and now I have a bump on my racial slur, then a quarter. Okay. JK says, do you wish you had the power of the good side? I mean, sure. I don't even know what that means exactly. I'm just picturing the force in my head. Mike says, get lost in the woods or get lost in Point Nemo. Obviously the woods. Glitchy says, do you listen to Vocaloid music? No, I don't. CR says, where's the timer at? I'm streaming 3 hours today, no timer. Pormer2 says, I think you read into that phrasing deeper than it was. The racial slur thing? Maybe. Cold Slayer says, reminder, WWE SmackDown is about to start. Okay, I don't care. Los says, what's your PC specs? Well, my desktop I'm streaming on has 64 gigabytes of RAM. Juju says, King Von was a rapper. He passed away. Okay. Tomato says, can you say S Mark? I'm not saying that. Not Jared says, why don't you get a better headset? Should I? Are you saying that my microphone quality isn't great? It should be better? Maybe I should follow your advice. Luke says, do you dread politics or religion getting brought up in chat? No, I actually enjoy reading that mostly. Alumni says, do you like bacon, egg, and cheese bagels? I don't like bacon too much. Goonie says, how old are you? I'm an adult. Tomato says, it means hi, Mark. Okay, I'm just paranoid, sorry. MT says, do you like the hamsters in my profile picture? I mean, sure, yeah. That room kind of looks like my room. That's kind of cool. And for whatever reason, it's popping in my head that Ice Poseidon ate a gerbil yesterday. Anyways, Tomato says it means hi, Mark. Okay, I'm just paranoid, sorry. Chicken says, are you tired? Are you high? I am just fine. Mike says, do you play Fortnite? I do play Fortnite. AD says, Kingston is a town in Massachusetts. Okay. Easy says, Labubu, I don't own one. Annie says, what's your softest side? I don't know, but I will say that it definitely does not appear here in the stream. JK says, when people insult you, you should say your mom. That seems corny, but thank you. The Famous says, do you like ice? I am not gonna talk about politics. X says, are you from Canada? I live in the USA and am from the USA. Lost says, should I go to sleep? I'm running on 2 hours. You know the answer to your own question. You obviously should. Gohan says, do you play soccer or baseball? I play neither. Easy says cat's eye. Okay. Velvet says, are you at math? Am I good at math? I'm not. Daniele says, it's always nice to see your face. Thank you. Mike says, what is your Fortnite username? I don't feel like giving it out, dude. Juju says, salute can mean hi in French. I speak French. Okay. Yeah, that guy earlier was probably right about it saying hi, Mark, but I'm just paranoid. Jake says, ice, ice, baby. Okay. Jax says, hi, hi, hi. Hello, Jax. Emily says, cats or dogs? Dogs. Max says, potato or sweet potato? Potato. Easy says, favorite song? A song I like is, what's a song I like? Tree Fingers by Radiohead. Helen says, why didn't you like Whataburger? I don't know. If I gave it another try, I feel like I might like it, but I just didn't like it that one time for some reason. Chill says hi. Hello, Chill. Cyber says, do you remember me? I do not. Only Edit says favorite sport. If I had to choose, basketball. JK says, when they insult your hair, say, your mom wears a wig. That's cute. Only Edit says same. Okay. Malin says, I got food poisoning from a restaurant, so I wouldn't dare to do that. So you're never gonna eat from a restaurant again? What? Evan says hi. Hello, Evan. Chill Guy says, what the fuck? Okay. Izia says, if you say hi, then you have to give me $50. Your comment doesn't hold that power. Nick says, what's your type/dream girl? I don't want them to look like me. I don't want them to have brown hair and brown eyes. I want something different. Ilumi says, Paul Denino, CX, Emily, only faked cancer once. Yahoo. He faked cancer? I did not know that. JK says, sorry for the bad spelling. Oh yeah, when you misspelled insult, it's okay. Jake says, McDonald's has a shamrock shake. Okay. Matcha says, what's your favorite sport? My favorite sport is Rainbow Six Siege Ranked. Delete says, I fell on my bed and the tooth mark is there. Wow, that's intense. Cherry says, have you ever watched KNY? I don't know what that is. Right now I'm thinking Kanye, but that's not what you mean. Catnip says, you look high. Well, I'm not high. Juju says, do you like Fake Plastic Trees by Radiohead? That's my favorite Radiohead song. Yeah, I mean, I like the album that song is on. I really only listen to their music as albums. WAP says, you're looking for something unique that someone said or something? I am. but I'm okay with normal comments too. Annie says, what's your dumbest purchase? My dumbest purchase, I mean, I have a very expensive mechanical keyboard that it was unnecessary to buy. It was like $200. A $100 mechanical keyboard could have done fine. Also, this gaming chair, I hate this gaming chair. I mean, I hate gaming chairs in general. Nick says, have you been watching the Olympics? I have not. Verdi says, do you have any pets or what? I have dogs. Was says, cheese Berber. Okay. Ronald says, when was the last thing you ate? The last thing I ate was a beef brisket sandwich. By the way, thank you again, Big Dick, for your big super chat. Better says XXYYXX DMT. Note it down. Okay, I'll note it down. Let me XXYYXX. Okay, noted. Eric says, bruh, gaming chairs are so uncomfortable. Buy an office chair. Yeah, I mean, the main reason why I dislike them is because I think they're corny, you know? Ruth says, what do you do for work? PA. What does that mean? PA. Taylor says, how old are you? I keep that private, but I am not a minor. Mike says, stay in the back rooms for 1 week, or stay in a void room for 1 week. The back rooms, because a void room would make me go crazy. Ruth says, Pa, short for Papa. How did that make sense in your okay, what do I do for work, Papa? You're calling me Papa? Okay. I keep that private. Andy says, so you stream for 3 hours? Do you even get hungry? I get a little bit hungry, but I usually make sure to eat something right before the stream. Better says, thanks Don, DMT has no words in the song. You might like it or their other stuff. Okay, I wonder if I'll like it. Christina says, do you play Roblox? No, I don't. Max says, is your eyesight shitty? Or are your eyes just strained? You keep squinting. I don't know. I probably could do without squinting. I don't know why I have this habit. Juju says, I own Radiohead albums. I prefer listening to CDs. You're like, you listen to albums on CDs? That's pretty cool. I wish I was like that. Only says, shitter. Okay. Okay, only edits. Raheem says hi. Hello, Raheem. TT says, I'm gay. Okay. Luke says, how does it make you feel that you are currently getting more attention than the greatest philosophers got during their lifetime? The greatest philosophers, Plato, Socrates, other philosophers weren't popular? I did not know that. Malin says, I feel like you should buy one with a massage in it. No, that seems unnecessary for a chair. I don't think so. Juju says, I love to collect CDs. It makes me happy. Okay. Glitchy says, do you like Disney or Disney? I don't know what the former is. Raja says, what's your favorite Pokemon? I like Mewtwo. Jason says, why are you getting finer and finer? I don't know. Lo says, you ever listen to UK or Garage? UK House or Garage? I've never listened to that. Them says, do you play Minecraft? Yes. Liminal says, are you going to see the Backrooms movie coming soon? I think I might. The director seems interesting, a young dude, someone familiar, someone that grew up on the internet. I wonder. Andy says, I genuinely like the positivity in the stream. I'm glad. Capri says, hey, I just want to say you're a cool guy and you're a very good streamer and your wig looks good. Thank you. Except for the wig part. Gohan says, go get a job. Okay. Justice says, hello. Hello, Justice. Juju says, band recommendation. I want to give something a try. I mean, I suggest, I don't know, I'm not too familiar with bands. Maybe Arcade Fire. The Potter says, I think this Hedwig plush is a good profile picture because if I choose any of the pics from the movie, anyone could copy it from Google and pretend to be me. Maybe. Aaron says weenie. Okay. Alia says what's your favorite movie? Eyes Wide Shut. Mike says get chased by 15 horror entities or get chased by 15 sharks and Point Nemo entities. C. Brown says I'm listening to car seat headrest at the moment. Cool. AD says have you ever played Mario? I have, yeah. Super Mario Wii. Cherry says and since you dude get to the point. Coco says hi. Hello, Coco. Lath says, would you rather have infinity curry or infinity... I don't know, man. Wah says cheese burger. Okay. Better says, would you have done anything different if most chats were just vulgar / insulting? I mean... I don't know. I don't think it would change much. I might actually enjoy the stream a bit more, actually. Helen says, Eyes Wide Shut. I've seen it about 5 times to understand it. I see. I've watched it many times, too. It's a interesting movie. I don't think there is anything to understand, though. I think it's very abstract. Corey says, would you have 6 eyes or have the sure again? What's that? Ramsey says, have you seen the Australian version of Eyes Wide Shut? No, and I don't really care to. Juju says, oh yeah, you've mentioned them before, I'll give them a try. Sounds good. Santi says 420 blaze it. Okay. Gohan says cool. Okay. Vanessa says, would you eat worms or have to end your career? I would eat worms. Chroma 2 says, shuriken is a slur, Don. I mean, it's also a ninja star, isn't it? I don't think it's a big deal because it's also a throwing star. Noah says, someone donated 300. Wow. Yeah, that was crazy. Big dick. Crazy. Ozzy says, what's your favorite holiday? Thanksgiving. Jack Marston says, does size matter? No comment. Annie says, what's your funniest mistake? My funniest mistake? Right now I'm thinking of me driving poorly, almost causing a wreck. And that's not funny. I don't know what a funny one is. Andy says, you know how crazy it is when people hate you so much they wait until you stream? They are unemployed themselves, maybe. You're crafty says, Jack, you're disgusting. Okay. Happy says, happy green man emoji. Okay. Better says, is dose a term or do people just misspell dose? I mean, isn't that the correct way to say two in Spanish? Yeah. Juju says, I have a friend that makes origami ninja stars. It's so cool. That does sound pretty cool. Roman says, I'm back. Dawn, the destroyer of dreams. You waste your time on the stream watching me instead of pursuing your dreams. Isla says, red face emoji. Okay. Heather says, I love you. Do you love me back? I'm a minor and a boy. Definitely not. Double not. Heather says, I already read that. Board says, happy text art. Okay. Lucy says, hi. Hello, Lucy. Big says, what is your favorite song? I like Francis Farmer. Kala says, hey, I love you. Thank you. Spunky says, how long is left on the invisible timer? 16 minutes. Happy Man says, game over. Emojis. Okay. It will be in 16 minutes. Comrade says, have you played Elden Ring, Unk? I have not, but people really love that game. Jolina super chatted $2 Thank you, Jolina. Jolina says, hello, Don. Please make me mod. I appreciate your super chat, and I also appreciate you. You often are here, and you always say positive things. You're never, insult. You never insult. But it requires a $10 super chat, a yellow super chat. So sorry, I'm not gonna mod you, sorry. But thank you though. Corey says, what's your favorite anime? Spirited Away. Better says, at Jolina, $10, dummy. No comment. Juju says, Spunky is here. Hi. Okay. Johnny says, if you rap, I will subscribe to your channel. Keep your subscribe. Your Crafty says, I like Julian. She's nice. Okay. Cherry says, sorry for last one. What anime? I just said a second ago. Goram says, say go LA. I don't care to say that. Spunky Gunner says, Spunky is always here. You are here pretty often. English says, I piss ice cream. Okay. Sui says, what rank are you in Rainbow Six Siege? Well, I don't remember my last rank, but look. I remember I was platinum once. That was my peak. Better says, they type dose as it does a lot. Oh, I guess they just are bad spellers. I don't think they're trying to be funny. I think it's just bad spelling. Bigfoot says, what's the point here? There's no great point. Junkie says, have you been to Little St. James? Epstein Island? I have not. I've never been to the US Virgin Islands at all. Jasmine says, go to sleep. No. Annie says, what dream you had that you'll never forget? I remember a crowd of people putting their hands on me, and their hands felt like lava, very hot. Heather says, I'm here often, but Don probably doesn't even remember me. I don't really. You should add a profile picture, maybe change your name. WAP says, you're at Rainbow 68, a ranking, does that mean you're like above normal? I said that I was platinum, which is a high rank. MH says, do you watch any Hero Academia? No, I don't. James says, yo, I drawn my profile in class, but then my teacher ripped it. Sorry. Sir says, what's up, popping back in. What's up, sir? Hamilton says, do you remember me? No, I do not. Bool says, hi. Hello, Bool. Spunky says, my dream was a guy was beating me in my sleep, then found out it wasn't a dream. It was a memory of the last time I saw my dad. Not a joke. Wow, that's a pretty dark dream / memory. Sorry. David says, cold, but honest, you are a bro. Okay. Philip says, $15 and don't forget the quarter. What? Loss says, how many hours until the stream ends? You should be asking how many minutes, because it's minutes. Oh wow, it's 2 minutes. I end the stream. No, it's 1 minute. I said earlier at the beginning of the stream that I would only be streaming for 3 hours, and right now it's 2 hours, 59 minutes, 18 seconds. Happy Man says, no. Okay. And he says, in my last stream, I was eating bananas with monkeys in the top of the trees. Eating bananas with monkeys. Okay. Spunky says, Innie is my second favorite, only behind Udon. Okay. Okay. By the way, I'll stream for an extra 1 minute, by the way. 3 hours, 1 minute. Sui says, what do you do with your free time? I video edit. Dexo says, sleep good, Don, and have happy dreams. Thank you. Nocturnal says, do you watch Stranger Things? I don't. Cheese says cheese. Cool. That Beach says, monkey emoji. I love you. Please pin. Gorilla emoji. I'm not pinning you. Hello says, what is your favorite color? I like gray. Lost says, you ever listen to Blink 182? I know that famous song of theirs, but I've heard it on the radio, but I've never seeked them out myself. Philip says, you met Diddy yet? I have not. Heather says, I'll have a wall profile picture. You're gonna add a profile picture? That's pretty cool. Corey says, I'm hyped for my game tomorrow. Can I get a fire emoji in the chat? I don't know if there's enough time for people to do that. Your Crafty says boring. Okay. Corey says, I'm hyped for my game good luck. Multi-Subconscious says, do you know Robert Stephen Conant? He is a great painter. I'll take a look at one of his paintings right now, off stream. Goodbye, everyone. See ya. I'll be live tomorrow. Bye-bye.